Hey guys, tonight we were sliding quietly yet somehow dramatically into the muddy, anxiety-ridden chaos of Sengoku-era Japan. You know, that romanticized period when samurai were supposedly elegant warrior poets with flawless hair buns and the social status of Beyoncé. Except no. It is more like if your boss could legally decapitate you for being late, your paycheck was made of rice, and the HR department was just some guy with a spear telling you to shut up and obey. Before we get started, go ahead and like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. No guilt. Leave a comment telling me where you are listening from and whether you are falling asleep on purpose or just accidentally scrolling through your midlife crisis at 2:17 AM. Now, dim those lights, put on a fan, and get comfortable. Tug a blanket around you like you're wrapping yourself in a slightly overcooked sushi roll. Because we were going back in time to a place where job security meant Dante die today, and your retirement plan was basically, hope your daimyo wins. Pause with me a second. Ever wonder if a samurai ever woke up and thought, I'd rather be literally anything else? Did they ever get tired of sleeping in armor like metallic burritos? Could you keep a straight face when your commander said, hey, tomorrow we might all perish, but bring your best vibes? How would you cope with getting paid in rice? You some kind of medieval bird. Was seppuku just the world's worst performance review? Did samurai ever look at a peasant holding a gun and think, great, there goes 20 years of sword practice, and now congratulations. You had just woken up in Sengoku-era Japan around the 1500s. War is everywhere. You smell like smoke and old rain. Your sword is worth more than your house. And yes, your boss wants a meeting. With your head. Good luck. You open your eyes to the sound of someone yelling about honor and breakfast at the same time. The yelling, by the way, is coming from a man who thinks the volume of his voice is directly proportional to the amount of wisdom he is delivering. He's got that stern, squinty look like he was born mid-scolding, and he's announcing to the household that you must rise, stretch, and prepare your tiny body for decades of martial trauma. You're maybe 5. You still can pronounce half the moral code they expect you to follow, and yet here you are, rubbing the sleep out of your eyes while someone ties your hair back like you're headed to the world's most stressful preschool. Let's talk about your bedroom. It's not really a bedroom, it's a wooden box with a straw mat and maybe a draft that politely slaps you awake each morning. The air smells like rice, sweat, and the burning anxiety that comes from living in a war-torn society. This is Sengoku-era Japan, where every morning feels like you've respawned into hard mode survival. Breakfast? It is fine. A bowl of plain rice, maybe some pickled vegetable that's been marinating in sadness since last week. You quietly wish for eggs. You don't even know what eggs taste like prepared any other way than meh. Your parents watch you shovel rice into your mouth like they're evaluating your worthiness to exist. They love you. Of course, they were just busy hoping you don't disgrace the family by dying too easily. So you slurp down your rice, and suddenly you're sent into training. You think it'll be a fun game, swing a stick, pretend to be a hero. Nope, it is the 5-year-old Olympics of pain. Some older kid, probably 11 but spiritually 73, hands you a wooden sword and whacks you without warning. Block, he screams. You cry. He tells you crying is dishonourable. You wonder what honour tastes like. Probably like rice. Your elders explain that you were born into the warrior class. That's supposed to sound glamorous. In reality, it means your fate was sealed the moment your tiny newborn baby fist clenched slightly too aggressively and someone whispered, yes, he'll kill for us. You didn't get a choice. No aptitude test. You were a samurai because everyone before you was a samurai, and surprise you're expected to embody the full, dramatic, moral ethos your society invented before you were even a glimmer on the family registry. Let us take a moment to appreciate this. today as kids complain about piano lessons and math homework. You've got lecture hour where you learn that failing in battle means committing seppuku. That's like your school counsellor saying, if you don't get into your top choice university, you'll need to, self-terminate. For morale. No pressure. You're also memorising philosophy texts written by men who very clearly had no hobbies other than thinking deeply about loyalty and dying beautifully. Your tutor quotes these lines at you like they were motivational posters. You nod politely, wondering if you'll ever be allowed to climb a tree instead of balancing on one foot in the courtyard while trying not to fall over. Let us talk about toys. You don't have plushies or wooden trucks. You have more sticks, some rocks. A pine cone that once felt comforting but is now just another training tool somehow. Childhood here is like being in a boot camp curated by a minimalist lifestyle influencer who thinks possessions distract from battle readiness. And speaking of distraction, your life is never quiet. Someone is always reminding you that you are part of a clan, an interconnected web of people who will be furious if you embarrass them. It's like living with 300 helicopter parents. Every auntie in the village has an opinion about your sword grip, and every uncle has stories about how they earned honour by doing something that feels mathematically impossible, like defeating 20 men with a ladle. One day you're allowed to watch older samurai spar in a cleared patch of dirt. The sound of wood and steel colliding is loud, deafening, and somehow calming. You watch them move with fluidity, precision, and an underlying fear that if they mess up, their boss will demote them to rice accountant. It's mesmerizing. You think, maybe I could be that good someday. Then someone throws sand in someone else's eye and you realize samurai combat is basically mixed martial arts with tax implications. Eventually you sneak back inside to escape the chaos. You think maybe you can nap, but no. Your mother pulls you aside and begins teaching you how to bow correctly. Apparently your previous bow was slightly too shallow, which is basically the social equivalent of dropping your chopsticks down a well. Bowing is important. It communicates respect, rank, and whether someone should consider murdering you. Finally, you collapse onto your mat. You're exhausted. You learned nothing. You learned everything. You stare at the ceiling and wonder if tomorrow someone will teach you how to pet a cat instead of how to disarm a grown man twice your size. Probably not. But hey, rice for dinner again. At least that's consistent. And so ends your first day as a child samurai born into the sword, with zero choice, zero chill, and a whole lifetime ahead of you spent trying not to disappoint literally everyone. Sleep tight. Just kidding. Training starts at dawn. Sword drills start at an age when you can barely tie a knot. Your fingers are still developing the fine motor skills required to fasten your own robe, and yet somehow you're expected to swing a wooden sword with technique, precision, and most importantly, no attitude. The adults call it discipline. You call it being hit with a stick until you rethink every life choice you never got to make. Training begins at sunrise, because naturally the universe wants you to suffer before breakfast. A senior instructor stands in the courtyard, looking like a man who has never smiled not once, not even accidentally. He carries a bamboo sword he wields like a conductor's baton, except the music he's conducting is children screaming and running in circles. He shouts orders about posture and balance and how the mind must be calm. Even as your nose is dripping, your stance is wobbly, and your wooden sword feels heavier than your future. Let's talk warm-ups. You run laps around the courtyard while the instructor corrects your form with the precision of a fashion critic and the empathy of a turnip. Lower, he barks. Focus, he adds. Why are you crying, he asks, as if the answer isn't everyone here is terrifying. Soon it is time for the good stuff, Beesic strikes. You grip your bokken, knuckles white, arms trembling. Someone tells you to imagine your sword is an extension of your soul. You're not even sure what a soul is yet. You picture it as a vaguely glowing rice ball. You swing, and the instructor frowns. You swing again, and he frowns harder. You didn't know there were degrees of disappointment, but apparently you were collecting them like Pokemon. Then comes the sparring. The moment you've been dreading the fun part, according to adults with unresolved trauma. They pair you with another child who has been training for like 8 extra weeks, which essentially makes them a seasoned veteran. You tap swords. They immediately smack you in the face. You fall. The instructor nods and says, "Good," again. Your opponent is 5 years old and somehow already knows how to deadpan smirk. You wonder if you'll ever know peace. Footwork is next. You learn that moving forward is acceptable, moving backward is cowardly, and moving sideways is complicated. You shuffle around like a baby bird trying to tango. Every few seconds, someone shoves you for leaning too far one way or screams the word center, as if you could command gravity. Eventually, your knees feel like boiled bamboo. Your hips ache. Your brain is just one long, vibrating scream. To keep things interesting, your instructor throws in archery. This means you get a tiny bow, a few arrows, and 2 minutes of instruction before being told to hit a target that is definitely way too far for a beginner. You aim, shoot, miss by several feet, and the arrow lands dangerously close to the rice storage. Someone glares at you like you've committed war crimes. You apologize to the rice. After that, there's horse practice. Remember how horses hate you? Yeah. You're now supposed to mount one, hold a sword, and not fall to your dramatic early death. You climb onto your horse, who immediately senses your fear and responds by trotting aggressively. You bounce around like laundry in a washing machine, clutching the reins while the instructor yells, "Relax," which is impossible when you're about 3 seconds from being yeeted into a pond. Now let's talk emotional support. There is none. Your feelings are irrelevant, like a decorative vase in a house that has never seen flowers. If you cry, someone tells you it builds character. If you complain, someone reminds you that a true warrior embraces suffering. As if suffering was some kind of collectible hobby like sea glass. Occasionally there's a break. You sit under a tree, trying not to pass out. You eat rice and pickles, sometimes a piece of dried fish that tastes like salt and regret. You stare at your hands, wondering if they'll ever not hurt. Then another kid sits down next to you and casually mentions that when he messed up yesterday, the instructor made him hold a heavy stone above his head until he reconsidered his existence. You nod, because that sounds normal now. Evenings aren't much better. After the last training session, your body collapses onto the tatami mat. But before you can sleep, an elder recites poetry about duty and stoicism. You pretend to listen. Really, you're just trying to remember what it feels like to not be covered in bruises. Eventually, you drift into that half-sleep, where your dreams are just silent men with swords, telling you to improve your footwork. But here's the twist. Somewhere within the bruises, the terror, and the endless yelling, something clicks. Your grip steadies. Your stance improves. You stop crying every time someone swings a sword near your face. Just most times. You begin to appreciate the rhythm of training the breathing, the balance, the strange grace of it. One quiet evening, you step into the courtyard alone. The moon hangs low, pale and curious. You raise your wooden sword, breathe, and move through the motions you have spent months memorizing. Strike, step, pivot, strike again. The night air feels cool against your skin. You surprise yourself. For a fleeting second, you think, maybe, just maybe you could get the hang of this. And then your instructor appears out of nowhere and says, "Your stance is garbage. Progress is real, but so is the pain." Welcome to your childhood, the Olympics of it, the Pain Olympics, where the only gold medal is not dying tomorrow. Sleep well. Training resumes at dawn. The village armor guy straps you into metal layers that weigh more than your emotional baggage. He doesn't ask how you feel about this. He doesn't care. He just keeps tightening cords and tying knots like he's wrapping an especially uncooperative holiday present. The armor creaks, pinches, and clanks, and you are pretty sure you've lost circulation in at least 2 limbs. He steps back, nods, and says, "Good," as if he has just turned you into a human suitcase. Let us take a breath if you can, because your lungs now have the flexibility of a canned sardine. This is Sengoku-era armor, lacquered plates of metal and leather, laced together like an insanely overbuilt corset. Everything is intended to protect the important parts: your torso, your shoulders, your thighs, basically everywhere except the places that will definitely get stabbed anyway. You try to stand confidently, but the weight pulls you forward like gravity got a promotion. You attempt a deep breath. Nope. Air is now a negotiable luxury. You glance at your arms. They droop like wet noodles under the weight of your new metal sleeves. Moving feels like someone is pressing pause every other second. This isn't armor. This is wearable anxiety. The armor artisan, let S call him Old Man Iron, circles you, tugging here, adjusting there. He talks about durability, craftsmanship, and ancestral design, but all you hear is the sound of your childhood evaporating. His hands are rough, and he smells like charcoal and resignation. You wonder if he ever wanted to be a poet, but fate put hammers in his hands instead. Try walking, he says. So you try. Try being the key word, because what you actually do is a slow-motion waddle. Each step comes with a series of metallic groans, like you're wearing a tiny haunted pantry. You look down, your feet are small, your sandals thin, and the armor goes to your knees. It's like wearing a winter coat made of bricks. You imagine running. You laugh. Running is cancelled. Let us talk mobility. You have none. Rolling onto your back? Impossible. Sitting down? Good luck. Hugging someone? Absolutely not. Your shoulders are encased in plates that jut out like aggressive shoulder pads from a 1980s power suit. They make you look important, but also guarantee that you will knock over at least one piece of pottery every time you turn. Someone hands you your helmet. It is heavier than a toddler and twice as uncooperative. Inside, it smells faintly of metal, sweat, and old rain, the scent of everyone who wore it before you. You slide it okay, force it onto your head. Your vision narrows, your hearing muffles. Suddenly the world is a tunnel of "please don't let me die." There is a chin strap. It digs into your jaw with all the warmth of a passive-aggressive co-worker. It is tight, very tight. The armor guy assures you that this is necessary to keep your helmet in place during battle. You nod not because you agree, but because your neck is stuck in the mildly agreeable position. Now comes the real joy. Weapons testing. You're told to draw your sword. Have we mentioned your arms now weigh 100 pounds? You reach for the hilt and begin pulling it free. The blade emerges, but your arm trembles like a chihuahua in winter. You manage to raise it halfway before gravity intervenes. The instructor nods and says, "Acceptable." You're not sure if that's encouraging or deeply insulting. You attempt a basic cut. The sword drops with a thunk, followed by your wrists whispering, "We're filing a complaint." You bow, your armor plates clacking like oversized bangles. Somewhere, someone laughs. You hope it is with you. It is not. Let us pause and appreciate what armor really is: medieval insurance. The goal is to not die immediately. The trade-off is that you can barely move. You are now a highly decorated, partially immobile target. On the battlefield, arrows will ping off your chest with a satisfying thud. That's good. But you may trip over your own armoured skirt and fall face first into the mud. That's less good. Grace is optional. Balance is fantasy. There is also maintenance. Armour needs to be cleaned and polished to prevent rust. Which means every night after training you sit by candlelight wiping your plates like a sad dishwasher. Your hands ache. You smell like oil. You wonder if anyone in history has ever had carpal tunnel at age 9. Probably you. The lacquered plates click with every movement. You're a walking wind chime of impending violence. Try being stealthy. You can tee. A samurai in full armour sneaking is like a metal trash can sliding down a flight of stairs. Birds hear you coming. Enemy scouts hear you coming. Your mum hears you coming and wonders why you are already injured again. And then there is heat. Armour cooks you like a dumpling. In summer you stew in your own sweat until your clothes cling to you like emotional regret. In winter, the metal bites your skin with Arctic enthusiasm. There is no winning, only varying temperatures of suffering. Still, the elders say, armour is honour. You nod, because disagreeing might get you stabbed. They claim each plate symbolises protection of your family, your lord, your land. It sounds poetic until you realise the only thing you want protected is your lower back, because this metal corset isn't ergonomic. Finally, after hours of fittings, adjustments, and trying not to collapse, the armour guy gives a tiny approving grunt. You are now battle ready, which is a lie. But it's cute that everyone believes it. You hobble outside, every step a clunking reminder that childhood is officially over. Another kid walks by, also fully armoured. You exchange glances, mutual suffering recognised. You don't speak. You can tee. Your helmet chin strap won't let you. The sun sets. You sit stiffly, armour creaking, wondering how anyone survives a battlefield in this metal prison. Because the art of not dying, it seems, begins with learning how to live while barely able to breathe. Sleep tight. Tomorrow you learn how to run in this thing. You will not succeed. Your salary? Rice. Not metaphorical rice, actual rice. Not gold, not coins, not stock options with generous vesting schedules. Rice. Sometimes polished, sometimes not. Usually measured in koku, a unit technically defined by how much rice it takes to feed one person for a year, and spiritually defined by still not, enough to make your life feel stable. A courier arrives from your daimyo-s estate with an official-looking ledger and a sack of rice. He bows too formally for this to feel normal, hands you 50 pounds of cereal, and disappears without so much as a Yelp review. Suddenly you are holding your yearly income in a burlap sack you could absolutely trip and spill into a river. No direct deposit, no overdraft protection, just rice. You drag your salary home and sit there staring at it like, okay, so where is the part where I pay my taxes? With more rice? Yes. The answer is yes. You get paid in rice and then turn around and pay taxes in rice. Somewhere an economist is screaming, let us take inventory of your new net worth. You have a bag of rice, a sword you're not supposed to sell, some armour that smells faintly of regret, and a horse that treats you like it's your landlord. Your rice paycheck isn't even just for food. It's food, rent, and social standing. The more rice you earn, the more important people think you are. You're essentially a carbohydrate-based influencer. Your worth is measured in grain quantity like a pantry-themed episode of Antiques Roadshow. And here is the kicker. You can't exactly pop down to the store and buy yourself a pastry. Town markets are full of quaint cafes and happy merchants offering samples. This is Sengoku, Japan. Your shopping experience consists of bartering while pretending not to notice that everyone around you looks like they've been at war since breakfast. Let us talk meals. You'd think being paid in rice means you eat well, right? No, because remember, you owe a chunk of that rice to other people, a tax to your daimyo, a portion to your family, some to temple donations, some to random fees that definitely weren't explained. Then there's your servants, if you're a fancy, or your elderly parents, if you're human. What is left is enough to keep you from starving, but also just enough to remind you that you're at best 2 bad harvests away from becoming a very hungry unemployed swordsman. You eat rice for breakfast, rice for lunch, rice for dinner. You know how in modern times people go low carb to feel healthy? Yeah, you're the opposite. You are carb incarnate. Sometimes you spice things up with pickled vegetables or a tiny piece of fish. The fish tastes like the ocean and disappointment. The pickles taste like someone bottled the flavor, tenses your jaw, and makes you rethink choices. You chew quietly while staring at your sword, wondering if you can use it to slice boredom. And because rice is currency, it is treated with near-religious reverence. Dropping a grain is basically losing a microportion of your paycheck. If someone spills a bowl, everyone in the house silently judges them like they committed light treason. There's no 5-second rule, there is only shame. If you save enough rice over time, you might be able to trade for luxuries like nicer clothing, paper for writing your dramatic samurai poetry, or a slightly more cooperative horse, maybe even a teacup that doesn't leak. But most of your rice goes back into the perpetual cycle of fueling your body, so you can swing a sword at other people who are also fueled by rice. Let's pause and reflect on financial planning. There isn't any. You get what you get, and you try not to die before the next harvest. A storm can ruin your year. A bandit raid can destroy your pantry. War can relocate your entire existence. Think of it like modern freelance work, except the consequences of missing rent are swords, not emails. Occasionally your lord promises bonuses. Did you fight bravely? Did you not embarrass him publicly? Did you bring back enemy heads like the world's worst trading cards? Congrats, maybe he'll give you a little extra rice, or a horse with slightly fewer issues. But don't get too comfortable. If your daimyo loses a war, or chooses the wrong political alliance like someone picking the losing sports team, you are toast. Rice gone. Rank gone. Job gone. You're suddenly a Ronin, wandering around trying to freelance for a new employer while sleeping in barns. You thought your salary was bad. Try no salary except the berries you find on the side of the road. You might wonder, why rice? Why not coins? The answer is simple. Rice is life. It is calories, survival, tradition, and wealth, all rolled into one bowl. Also, coins weren't widespread yet, and rice kept everyone dependent on the agricultural hierarchy, mainly peasants growing it, samurai eating it, and lords collecting too much of it. Your entire financial identity comes down to a grain that can be ruined by weather, water, pests, or a bad week of military decisions. And yet when you sit with your family over a steaming bowl, you feel a calm certainty. The warmth fills your belly. The simple taste reminds you that, despite the chaos around you, for this one moment, you're safe, you're fed, you're almost content. Then someone reminds you taxes are due next week, and you stare into your bowl, calculating how much rice you'll have to surrender to keep your life intact. In the end, you scoop up another bite, quietly resigning yourself to the fact that in this world, your worth is measured by a food group. Congrats, samurai. You are paid in carbs, and somehow, you are still broke. Hope you like rice. You're not getting anything else. You wake before dawn, splash freezing water on your face, and try to convince your brain that this counts as self-care. The water is drawn straight from a stream colder than your supervisor's heart. It hits your skin like a slap from a ghost who never learned boundaries. There's no gentle easing into the morning, no warm shower, no cozy bathrobe. Just icy hydration and an immediate reminder that comfort is for people who do not have to fight wars before breakfast. The sky is still dark, a deep blue fading slowly into grey as birds whisper about how early it is. You can almost hear them judging you. Wow, humans are weird. You nod in agreement. Your hands shake not from fear, necessarily, but because the water has stolen every ounce of warmth from your body. This is your coffee, your wake-up call. There's no caffeine, only pain and commitment. Let S talk about your bathroom. It's not a bathroom. It is the space outside where no one is currently standing. You splash your face so aggressively you begin to wonder if you've invented skincare by accident. The samurai lifestyle swears this practice purifies your spirit. You suspect it simply purifies your sinuses. Either way, you're now fully awake. You wring out your cloth and watch the droplets fall like tiny reminders that you chose none of this. In the dim morning light, you tie your hair into a top knot, fingers fumbling because you still can't feel them. The knot keeps your hair out of your face so it doesn't interfere with training, combat, or existential dread. Next, you slip into your kimono and hakama layers of fabric designed for mobility and occasional panic sprints. The cloth is rough, like it was woven from low expectations. You adjust your belt and try not to think about the day ahead. Breakfast is waiting, which is generous phrasing. Someone has placed a small bowl of rice and pickles on the table or floor, depending on how fancy your family is. You squat, because chairs are a myth that won't be invented for another few hundred years. You eat in silence, partly because you're meditating on existence and partly because no one is awake enough to talk. This morning meal is simple. White rice, a few pickles, maybe miso soup if the household is feeling wild. The rice warms your stomach but not your soul. The pickles try to be exciting but mostly just punch your taste buds in the face. Meanwhile, your miso has the savoury warmth of a hug from someone who doesn't like you that much. Once fed, you step outside. The cold air bites, but the calm is beautiful. The world feels still. You can hear frogs in the distance, dew sliding from leaves, and unfortunately the voice of your instructor. He calls you to the courtyard like he's summoning a spirit. You sigh. You consider hiding under the floorboards, but samurai don't hide. They just contemplate terrible decisions and proceed anyway. First ritual, cleaning your sword. Yes, even before the sun is fully up. You kneel on the cold ground and wipe your blade, breathing with deliberate calm. As you work, you can smell the faint metallic tang mingling with oil. Your sword is your life, your pride, your anxiety on a stick. Every moment you spend maintaining it is a reminder that your survival depends on how shiny it is. Modern folks complain about brushing their teeth every night. You gently polish a razor that might determine your future employment status. After sword maintenance comes meditation. You sit with your knees folded under you, back straight, shoulders relaxed. Your instructor tells you to empty your mind. Your mind does not empty. Instead, it fills with intrusive thoughts about rice taxes, your horse S attitude, and that other kid who hit you yesterday totally on purpose. You try to focus on breathing. You succeed for 3 breaths before mentally spiraling about whether you left your sandals in the rain. Meditation is followed by calisthenics, the kind designed by someone who hated children. You stretch until your muscles whimper. You run laps around the courtyard while balancing a sword. You do push-ups in gravel. The instructor watches, nodding occasionally with the satisfaction of a man who enjoys watching small people suffer. You wonder what he eats for breakfast. Probably nails. Now it's time for silent reflection. This sounds pleasant. It is not. You kneel facing the clan altar and consider your duties. Your ancestors stare at you from behind lacquered wooden tablets, judging quietly. You bow, mutter a prayer, and hope none of them expect too much. You're trying your best, okay? One day, you hesitate just for a moment before kneeling. You slept badly. You missed your mother as cooking. You're retired. Your instructor notices your hesitation and informs you that a true samurai never hesitates. You nod, accepting his judgment, while internally screaming like a kettle left on the fire. Next, you practice tying your obi the sash that secures your outfit. This is harder than it sounds. It's like wrapping a stubborn python around your torso while someone critiques your knot quality. You finally succeed, but it feels wrong. You ignore that feeling and pray it doesn't unravel mid-training. By now, the sun has finally peeked over the horizon. Its light warms your face just enough to remind you that nature might not hate you entirely. You take a deep breath. The day has begun. You feel oddly balanced calm in the face of inevitable chaos. The rituals work, even if you don't always understand how. Your body still aches. Your fingers are still numb. Your hair is questionably even. But as you stand with your fellow trainees, swords by your sides, you feel the tiniest spark of pride. Because despite the cold water, the minimal food, and the constant pressure, you're still here, still breathing, still standing. Which is good, because morning training is about to begin, and those wooden swords have no mercy. Good luck, you're gonna need it. You grind, polish, and whisper to your blade like it is your emotional support animal. It is sharper than your social skills, and honestly, this sword might understand you better than your entire family. At least it never criticizes your posture, or compares you to that one cousin who allegedly decapitated 3 enemy commanders before he hit puberty. Your sword just lies there quietly, reflecting your face in its mirror-like surface, silently judging you yet offering stability in a way no adult in your life ever has. Sword maintenance isn't optional. It is your morning, midday, evening, and occasionally midnight ritual. While other kids might have spent their time skipping stones or crafting imaginary worlds, you're hunched over a blade, cycloning between existential dread and extreme concentration. If the sword is dull, you're dead. If the sword rusts, you might as well fill out your resignation letter in blood. No pressure. Let us talk tools. You've got your whetstone, your polishing powder, your oils, your cloths, and most important, your trembling sense of purpose. You kneel before your blade like you're performing open-heart surgery. Each stroke across the stone is slow, precise, and strangely meditative. The scraping sound is calming like a tiny metallic ocean wave, reminding you that life is fleeting and also sharp. Your instructor claims that maintaining your sword is akin to maintaining your soul, which raises several questions. Why is your soul this pointy? Why does it require so much oil? And what happens if you accidentally nick it? He doesn't answer. He just tells you to keep polishing until the blade gleams like a smug moon. Speaking of oil, sword oil smells complicated. A little like sesame, a little like regret, and just a dash of this better not get on your clothes. If you spill even a drop onto your hakama, it will stain forever. Every samurai has at least one outfit marked by oil blotches, badges of honor or shame, depending on who is judging. Let S get into the process. You sit. The sword sits. You bow. Yes, you bow to the sword. This is to show respect, and because you were terrified, it might spontaneously punish you if you don't. You disassemble it. Blade handle, guard, tang. You lay everything out on a clean cloth, like you're about to assemble IKEA furniture with infinitely sharp parts. Then comes the polishing. The blade glides across the stone with long, even strokes. You focus on keeping the angle just right because if you mess up, congratulations, you've created an expensive butter knife. This whole process can take hours. Hours. Sometimes all day. Sword maintenance is the original time sink like binge watching a show, except instead of waiting for plot twists, you're waiting for the blade finish to look slightly more smug. Your hands ache. Your back aches. Your mind wanders to forbidden thoughts like, what if I just done to do this today? But that's treason. So you keep going, whispering little affirmations to your blade like, we were doing great, and please don't fail me. Because emotional support is free and you're desperate. Eventually you wipe down the blade with oil. The cloth slides smoothly over the metal, leaving it glossy. The fragrance fills the air as if announcing, this sword is ready to ruin someone's afternoon. You smile just a little. The blade gleams at you, reflecting your tired face, dark circles, and maybe a rogue eyebrow hair. Now let's talk about the terrifying part. Testing. You take your freshly maintained sword into the yard where a dummy made of straw or bamboo waits. You line up your strike, draw a deep breath, and slash. If the sword cuts clean through, you survive another day of respect. If it doesn't, well, let us just say you'll be back at the whetstone until your arms resemble boiled noodles. Everyone watches. Some cheer, others judge silently. You pretend not to care. Inside, your self-esteem hangs by a thread woven from rice and anxiety. Occasionally, a samurai S-sword is passed down for generations. These blades have histories, stories of battles, tragedies, ghosts, and questionable decisions. When you hold such a sword, you feel the weight of every ancestor who wielded it. It's like inheriting a family diary written in iron and blood. No pressure. New swords, on the other hand, feel sterile. They don't know you yet. You must bond with them, feed them oil, polish them, whisper your fears in the quiet hours of the night while everyone else sleeps. You become intimately familiar with every curve and edge. Eventually, you might even give it a name, something dramatic like Moon Cutter or Sadness Divider. Sword storage is also part of the ritual. You keep your blade in a wooden scabbard, usually lacquered, sometimes decorated. You always place it edge up. This protects the cutting side and shows trust. When you set it beside your bedding, it is like tucking in your roommate who will absolutely murder trespassers. Now, real talk. Your sword is the most stable relationship you have. It is always there. It never lies. It never asks about your 5-year plan. You start to realize that if you spent half as much time polishing your interpersonal skills as you do polishing this blade, you might have friends. But hey, friends can parry arrows. After another long day of maintenance, your sword finally gleams with the quiet smugness of a tool that knows you will choose it over sleep every time. You store it, bow to it again for luck, and stretch your aching fingers. Just before bed, you glance over at your sword. It sits quietly, faithful, deadly. Your one true partner through every muddy battlefield and questionable life choice. You whisper, see you tomorrow, because you will. Every day, forever. Good night. Horses of the Sengoku era are small, stubborn, and one sneeze away from bucking you into a ditch. You feed it rice you wish you could eat yourself, and in return it looks at you like you've personally offended its ancestors. This animal is not your friend. It is your frenemy. Your reluctant ride or die, or perhaps ride and then die, depending on its mood. When you first met, you thought your bond might be profound and mythical, like something out of a beautiful watercolor scroll or a sentimental anime flashback. Instead, it felt like being assigned a lab partner who can kick. Let S paint the scene. You approach your horse confidently, hand extended, offering food. It stares back, unimpressed. You are beneath it socially, economically, and spiritually. It is basically a furry, four-legged aristocrat, and you're the intern. You set down a precious handful of rice. It eats 2 grains, sneezes dramatically, and then licks a rock instead. You wonder if horses can be defective. Mounting your horse is an Olympic event. There is no saddle design ergonomically tested by medieval chiropractors. Just leather, some rope, and hope. You grab the reins, put your foot in the stirrup, and attempt to swing your leg over. The horse immediately steps away like it's dodging your emotional attachment. You hop awkwardly on one foot, armor clanking. Villagers watch. A child snickers. You contemplate retirement. Once you are finally on, every part of your body complains. The saddle is less seat and more public punishment. You straighten your back. The horse shifts. You grip the reins. The horse ignores you. You try to signal forward. The horse interprets this as backward violently. You curse. The horse considers cursing back. You compromise on standing still for a full minute. Now let us discuss speed. Sengoku-era horses are not the tall, elegant, majestic steeds of fantasy. They are compact, sturdy, and wholly resentful of cardio. They trot like they were on break. They gallop only under emotional blackmail. When they do move at speed, it feels like you're sitting atop a small earthquake with a bad attitude. Your teeth rattle. Your armor slams into your ribs. Your internal organs file gentle complaints. Other samurai ride alongside you looking elegant and composed. Their horses obey commands, trot gracefully, and stop on cue. You suspect sorcery, maybe bribery, maybe their horse is just like them. You look at yours and whisper, "Why do you hate me?" It responds by chewing your sleeve. Training is worse. Your instructor insists you practice mounted archery because apparently controlling a horse while shooting a moving target is a reasonable expectation for a teenager who still struggles with chopsticks. You notch an arrow, raise your bow, and shout the command to move. Your horse hears "embrace chaos" and bolts diagonally toward a pine tree. You miss the target by several zip codes. The instructor sighs, a sound of spiritual defeat. Let us talk battles. On the battlefield, your horse is your survival tool and also your biggest liability. Arrows fly. People yell. Fires burn. Your horsey survival tactic is to panic in a circle. You tug the reins. It decides now is a good time to sit. You attempt a desperate sword strike from horseback, but the moment you lift your arm, the horse does that sideways shimmy horses do when they've decided they're done for the day. And don't forget, you must take care of this beast. Grooming is essential. You brush its coat, clean its hooves, and whisper kind words into its twitching ear. You do everything right, yet somehow it still bites you. Not hard, just enough to say, "Don to get attached." You've been told that bonding with your horse takes time. Talk to it, they say. Share your feelings, they say. So you sit with your horse one evening, moon high, and confess your worries. You speak softly about rice taxes and your fear of seppuku. The horse responds with a loud snort and then farts audibly into the night. Spiritual moment over. You consider giving your horse a name, something meaningful like thunder or moon shadow. But after spending time with it, you realize a more accurate name is potato. Small, lumpy, occasionally useful, mostly stubborn. When you call it potato, other samurai judge you. You don't care. Potato, however, ignores you anyway. Let us take a moment to appreciate that horses have a sixth sense for danger. They just refuse to share it with you. They'll perk up, ears twitching, tail flicking, muscles tense, clearly sensing an ambush ahead. You lean in. What is it? Bandits, shinobi. Potato says nothing, then walks directly into danger. Feeding time is another adventure. Horses eat better than you. They get fresh plants, grains, and special treats. Meanwhile, you get rice and existential dread. You scoop grain into a trough, and your horse thanks you by knocking the bucket over and stepping in it. Your instructor yells at you. The horse watches, satisfied. Some samurai claim their horses saved their lives leaping into rivers, dodging arrows, or dragging their wounded riders to safety. You dream of such loyalty, but Potato is more likely to abandon you for a patch of grass. And yet there is affection buried under the irritation. After a long day, Potato nudges your shoulder, gently. You scratch its neck. Its eyes soften. For a moment, just a moment, the world feels peaceful. You realize this stubborn creature is just as trapped in this chaotic era as you are forced to carry armored teenagers into war with zero say in the matter. So you forgive Potato. Mostly. Until it bites you again tomorrow. Then you start the whole cycle over. Because your horse hates you. But you kind of love it anyway. You sit in a swamp, clutching your sword like a security blanket. The ground beneath you makes a faint gloop every time you shift your weight, as if protesting the mere concept of sitting. Your armor is soaked. Your socks, if you can call them socks, are wetter than soup. Everything smells vaguely like mildew and a bad decision. This is not the glamorous samurai life you were promised in childhood story time. This is camping, but without s'mores, friends, or any sense of what's going on. War camps in Sengoku, Japan are basically a chaotic pop-up city made from sticks, mud, and collective anxiety. Tents sprout at odd angles. Horses wander around, judging everyone. Samurai huddle next to tiny fires like mismatched mall Santas. The peasant soldiers, mostly conscripts who got tricked into showing up, sleep on reed mats if they were lucky. If they were unlucky, they sleep wherever they happen to collapse. You have no itinerary, no schedule, no Google Calendar invite that tells you what time today's chaos begins. Every morning starts with the same thought. Are we marching, resting, dying, breakfast? Who knows? Even your commanders, supposedly the adults in this situation, exchange long shrugs and mutter, "We'll see. Let us talk weather. It rains." All the time. There is no clear reason for this, but it feels personal. You wake up damp, you train damp, you eat damp, and you sleep damp. Your clothes never dry. Ever. You begin to suspect that the sun is a myth made up by older samurai to keep morale high. Sometimes, when the clouds break, you stare at the warm light like it's a divine revelation, and then immediately get yelled at to keep digging trenches. Mud becomes your identity. It clings to your skin, your clothes, your hair, your weapon. You carry so much mud that you gain 5 imaginary pounds in sadness alone. Walking is now wading. Standing is sinking slowly. And running, unless you are blessed by a miracle, it is falling face first into a puddle. You'd think the camp would be somewhat organized. It is not. There are no signs, no maps, no labels, just clusters of people standing around pretending to know what is happening. Occasionally someone shouts an order, "Move the supplies!" and everyone scrambles in a direction that feels correct. 20 minutes later, they discover the supplies were supposed to go the opposite way, and the entire group sighs like a defeated choir. Let us talk food. The meals here make breakfast at home feel like a 5-star tasting menu. Every bowl is some combination of watery rice, bitter greens, and despair. Sometimes there is fish, but it tastes like it's been through emotional trauma. You choke it down because calories are calories, and living burns a lot of them. Water is plentiful, but suspicious. You drink from streams and rivers, hoping nature is feeling generous. If not, congratulations, you've contracted dysentery. And unlike a video game, no cheerful pixel doctor is coming to save you. As for entertainment, there is none. Conversation topics include the weather. The food, who s, probably going to betray whom, the weather again. Whether that peasant soldier looks like he's gonna bolt in the night. More weather. You try listening in on the strategists, hoping to learn something useful. They whisper plans like ancient cryptic riddles. If Lord Hojo moves at dawn, we'll flank unless the Takeda intercept first send a message to Osaka. Where are the horses? You nod as if you understand. You do not. Everyone is tense. War camps are like group projects where every team member is armed and exhausted. The air hums with nerves. People sharpen their swords aggressively, as if grinding louder will make enemies magically surrender. Others sit quietly, staring into the distance like they were watching a very boring ghost. Let's discuss hygiene. There isn't any. You wipe mud off your face with a muddy hand. You splash cold water on your body, which only makes you wetter, not cleaner. Your clothes smell like pond. Your hair smells like horse. Your bedding smells like betrayal. You consider a bath, but realize that the only available tub is a puddle, where a horse just sneezed. So you settle for being perpetually unwashed and hope no one notices. Everyone notices. At night, the camp is loud. Fires crackle, horses snort, men snore like thunder. You can hear armor clanking, the distant hoot of an owl, and somewhere, someone having a panic attack. Valid. You lie on your straw mat, staring at the stars, wondering how you got here. Spoiler, someone forced you. Sleep is sporadic. You drift off only to be jolted awake by someone screaming, "Alarm!" Everyone rushes out, weapons ready only to find a raccoon knocked over a rice box. People go back to bed, grumbling. The raccoon gets away. It comes back later, steals more rice, and you start thinking of it as the camp general. Sometimes real alarms happen. Scouts report movement. Enemy forces approach. You grab your sword, heart pounding, ready for battle, and then stand around for 3 hours waiting for someone to decide whether this situation is serious or just rural teenagers playing with torches. Days blur together. You train, eat, clean your sword, eat again, wait for orders, sleep, and repeat. Occasionally you are told to pack up camp and move, which involves hours of marching through terrain so uneven your ankles start questioning life choices. Yet, within the chaos, something unexpected happens. Companionship. You bond with the people around you. You share bad meals. You laugh at stupid jokes. You talk about home, family, that one guy who snores like he has a beehive in his throat. These men, smelly and exhausted, become your people, not by choice, by survival. And sometimes, just sometimes, the camp quiets. The fire is soft, the night air is cool, the sky is speckled with stars. You feel strangely at peace, still cold, still wet, but at peace. Then a senior officer runs in shouting, "Everyone up," and the chaos begins. Again, welcome to camp life, where you're always damp, always confused, and never emotionally prepared. Sleep tight. Something is definitely happening at dawn, but nobody knows what. Swords clash, arrows whistle, and suddenly you wish you became a potter. Because compared to this, sitting quietly shaping clay sounds like a luxury resort. 1 minute you're standing in the fog with your squad, clutching your sword and trying to remember which side you're on. The next minute, every sense you have is being assaulted by noise, motion, and the distinct perfume of mud mixed with blood, mixed with where did that come from? The battlefield is chaos incarnate. Forget the clean duels from movies, this is a sweaty yelling soup of fear and bad decisions. The mud grabs your feet with the enthusiasm of a toddler, refusing to let go of a parentess leg. You try to run, but every step is a gamble. Will you move forward, or will the ground swallow you like a soggy croquette? Your helmet rattles with every breath. You hear someone yell orders, but it sounds like they're speaking from inside a teapot. The command might be advance, retreat, or take a left at the burning farmhouse and hope for the best. It's impossible to tell. Everyone is shouting. Everyone is running. Everyone is screaming the name of some guy named Takeshi, who is already very dead or very lost. Let's talk arrows. They come first. Long before you see the enemy, you hear the telltale whistle, the sonic equivalent of a "you're about to have a bad time" notification. The sky darkens with wooden darts that are somehow both elegant and horrifying. The sound is surreal, like angry cicadas with a vendetta. You crouch, you pray, you question every life decision that led you here. One arrow thunks into the mud beside you, kicks up dirt, and reminds you that fate has excellent aim and terrible manners. Around you, men fall. Some cry out, others just drop silently like puppets with their strings cut. You don't have time to process. You barely have time to think. Your heartbeat is in your ears, pounding like a taiko drum going through an emotional crisis. Then comes the clash. Two armies meet in the worst game of contact sports imaginable. The first person you face is a guy who looks terrified, sweating so much his helmet is basically a personal rain cloud. You lock eyes. He raises his spear. You raise your sword. Neither of you wants to be here. You both swing anyway. Steel hits wood. Sparks fly. Your hands shake. Someone bumps you from behind, shouting something that could be encouragement or a recipe for soup. You push forward, slipping on mud that has the consistency of lukewarm despair. You swing again wide, clumsy, fueled by panic. The guy stumbles, trips, and disappears under a surge of bodies. Your stomach twists. You don't know if he's dead. You don't have time to care. War smells interesting. It is a mix of smoke, wet earth, sweat, blood, fear, and something that reminds you faintly of old pickles. Someone's torn armor is smouldering. Someone else is on fire, literally, and sprinting, while other people chase him with wet cloaks. It's a lot. You hear a scream, then another, then one that sounds suspiciously like a guy complaining about his ankle. Your comrades shout, form ranks, scatter, form ranks again. Nobody seems to know what the actual plan is. The commanders at the back shout strategy like they're reordering takeout. Left flank, no. Right, no, stop. It is comforting to know that even they are confused. Then fire, not metaphorical fire, actual fire. Arrows wrapped with burning cloth arc across the sky like someone decided to make the apocalypse festive. Houses, trees, and unlucky people ignite. You feel the heat even from a distance. The flames reflect on armor like terrible holiday lights. You smell hair burning. You try very hard not to think about whose hair it is. It gets worse. After the first wave of melee, everyone is tired. You are panting like a dog. Your arms feel like wet noodles. And then someone yells, "Charge again!" You consider charging in a different direction like home, but instead, you follow the group because peer pressure is a powerful force, and also because running away gets you stabbed by your own side. Mud splashes up your legs as you run. Your sword drags slightly because your wrist is screaming. You hear horses, lots of them, thundering toward you. Cavalry. They here to support you or trample you, depending on timing. The horses crash through lines, riders slicing and shouting, hooves kicking mud into your face. One horse screams, and suddenly you remember you forgot to feed your horse enough this morning. The guilt is real. At some point, you lose your footing. You fall hard into a puddle that's at least 20 mystery fluids. You scramble up just in time to block a spear thrust. Sparks fly. Your hands burn. You knee someone by accident. They scream insults. You scream back. Neither of you knows what is happening. You keep swinging, you keep ducking, you keep hoping. Hours pass, or maybe minutes, it is impossible to tell. Time loses meaning when every second might be your last. Eventually a horn sounds. Retreat? Victory? Lunch break? Nobody knows. But everyone starts stumbling in the same direction, and you follow, because following the crowd has been an excellent survival strategy to this point. You stagger away from the battlefield, drip in sweat and mud, heart racing. You look down at your blade. It's filthy, nicked, exhausted. You feel the same way. You look behind you. Smoke rises, bodies lie still, crows circle overhead like fashionable death interns. You breathe. You are alive. And suddenly, pot-making sounds like a fantastic career pivot. But tomorrow you'll be back, because you are a samurai, and this nightmare is your job. You trained for decades, only to discover that some farmer named Kenji can end your career from 200 meters away with a matchlock he bought on medieval Amazon. This is the cruel, hilarious irony of Sengoku Japan. You've spent your entire childhood perfecting sword swings, horse riding, meditative breathing, and looking honourable in moonlight, only for guns, literal tubes that go boom to show up and turn your skill set into historical fan fiction. Your ancestors weep, your sword weeps, you weep, quietly, behind your helmet. Firearms arrive from Portuguese traders in the mid-1500s, and Japan took one look at these noisy toys and said, "Yes, please, give us all of them." And suddenly the entire samurai class is scrambling not just from arrows and spears, but from dinky wooden rifles that, frankly, look like someone taped a candle to a stick and trusted God. Let us talk about the matchlock. It is simple, too simple. You aim, light a smouldering wick, pull a lever, and boom. Physics sends a lead ball straight into the nearest swordsman with dreams and depth. It doesn't care how many poems you've written. It doesn't care that your sword was forged by a legendary smith who spat enlightenment onto molten steel. It just goes boom, and you go by. You remember your first firearm encounter. You were on a hill, looking majestic, wind flowing through your hair, armor glinting. You'd practiced this pose. Suddenly, bang! Something nearby explodes into dirt. You blink. You look around. No opponent is close enough to punch dramatically. Another bang. A guy next to you just falls. No epic duel. No witty final words. Just thump. Into the mud. Gone. You stare, horrified, as a line of Ashigaru common foot soldiers kneel on the other side of the field and reload calmly, like they were making tea. These aren't noble warriors. These are dudes named Kenji, Taro, and probably Steve if he'd gone abroad. They were milking goats 2 weeks ago. Now they were holding weapons that turned samurai into historical cautionary tales. Let us discuss the emotional fallout. You realize that your entire life sword drills, stance correction, yelling at your horse, polishing your blade until you could see your existential dread, can now be undone by a guy with no training except point this toward the enemy and Dante sneeze. You watch a youth fire a gun for the first time and his face says, "Oh, neat." Your face says, "My legacy is over." And reload time, painfully slow, agonizingly slow. You'd think this would give you an advantage. No, because armies line soldiers in waves. One line fires, kneels, the next line fires. Kneels. It's like a lethal stadium wave. You're just in the splash zone. Have you ever tried charging at someone firing at you from a safe distance? It's terrible. You run, screaming your battle cry for honor, while Kenji calmly points his boomstick and thinks, "Please stop running toward me, this is scary." He fires. You drop. Honor preserved. Kind of. Now, the worst part, guns don't care about skill, they care about luck. A master swordsman and a nervous teenager are equally dead if the bullet goes surprise kiss at the right angle. Generals love guns. They say things like, they were efficient, they level the battlefield, they were cheaper than feeding a well-trained samurai for 20 years. You hate guns. They say things like, no thank you, I'd like my organs to stay inside, and this is not what I signed up for when I learned to meditate under waterfalls. Let us talk sound. Guns are loud. Not like, oops, I dropped a plate. More like the universe just hiccuped and wants you dead. The first time you hear a volley, you think thunder gods are angry. The second time you think maybe they're correct. And the smoke. Battles become smog festivals. You can barely see. You cough. Everyone coughs. Someone swings blindly. Someone else yells, "Who's stabbing me?" Nobody knows. Guns have turned warfare into a lethal game of Marco Polo. To make things worse, peasants with guns start earning respect. Respect. People like Kenji, who wouldn't have been allowed to polish your sandals 5 years ago, now decide battles. He gets food, praise, maybe even clothing that fits. You watch bitterly as he stands proudly with his firearm, and you clutch your sword like a nostalgic scrapbook. You try to imagine the future. Will swords disappear? Will samurai become obsolete? Will armor become decoration? The thought terrifies you. You spent your whole life learning how to artfully remove heads. What happens when nobody needs that anymore? Do you get a day job? And yet, despite how much you hate guns, you can't deny they were effective, even elegant in their own devastating way. You respect the craft, even if you want to kick each matchlock into a river. You return to camp after another gun-filled battle. Your ears ring, your nerves shake. You sit, polish your blade again and whisper, "It's not you, it's them." Your sword gleams back at you, sympathetic but silent. Tomorrow, more guns, more smoke, more frightened farmers taking down armored elites like they're shooting noisy ducks. Progress is weird, and for samurai it's kind of the worst. Sleep well. Tomorrow Kenji might be waiting. You're expected to collect enemy heads as proof you did your job. Not a metaphorical head count like HR asks for after a meeting, an actual head. The practice, gruesome and bureaucratic in equal measure, is part battlefield trophy, part medieval KPI. Bring back a head, and your commander nods approvingly, perhaps hands you extra rice, and updates the ledger that decides how many tatami you sleep on next winter. It sounds like an ancient, terrible form of quality control, and that is because it is. Welcome to feudal performance reviews. Let us walk through the logistics, because the world loves paperwork even when it smells faintly of mud and old blood. After the clash, when the smoke thins and the screaming quiets into a low collective gasp, warriors file past fallen enemies and check the tally. Heads are taken to an appointed official. Think of him as a samurai auditor who examines them, confirms identities, sometimes by a tattoo, sometimes by recognizing a hat, and gives you credit. No modern LinkedIn endorsements here. Instead, you get a nod and maybe a rice bonus. The sensory details are vivid. You carry the head wrapped in cloth or in a straw basket, the weight of it reminding you that victory has substance. There's the coldness at first, like carrying a stone pulled from a river. Then, as the day goes on, things warm and lose their stiffness. The smell arrives, metallic, earthy, slightly like rain on iron. People avert their eyes or stare depending on how used to this they are. Children, if they be nearby, are sometimes brought to witness the proof of victory, which feels roughly like bringing kids to a tax seminar. There's a ritual to it, of course. Heads are displayed, counted, and sometimes ranked. Local commanders get certain names recognized. Notable enemies get special mention. If you brought back a head of a prominent samurai, you might earn prestige, a hairstyle compliment, and a story told at dinner for a month. If you brought back a peasant's head by mistake, you were in trouble. Administrative errors were not forgiven by the kind of people carrying sharp things. Why did this happen? Because in a society where identity and reputation matter, a physical proof was harder to dispute than hearsay. There were no smartphones, no CCTV, and no certificates of authenticity. A head was evidence. It was proof that you had been useful, that you had survived, and that your clan's resources were not wasted on you. It is terrifyingly pragmatic. It is also, undeniably, a logistical nightmare for anyone trying to be sanitary. The psychological trade-offs are steep. You are asked to convert a living human into an object, a ledger entry, a means to an end. You do this because the social machinery demands it. Your family's survival, your honor, your ration of rice. Over time, the practice numbs you. You become efficient. You stop imagining the person you took. You imagine instead the rice you will earn, and the look of approval when a senior officer inscribes your name in his book. Detachment is a survival skill disguised as honor. Sometimes, enemies are unrecognizable, too damaged, too burned, too many of them on a battlefield, and the official process gets messy. There are stories of samurai stealing heads to claim credit, or of brave men swapping trophies like children trading marbles. There are also tales of families bribing officials to list their son as fallen hero to gain social standing, which somehow makes the whole affair feel simultaneously more bureaucratic and more absurd. And yet, despite the horror and the paperwork, there is also dark humor. You learn to move quickly, wrap the head carefully, and practice your face for that moment when you present it solemnly to your lord. You imagine modern HR trying to run this. Please submit your head via the portal, attach a brief cover letter, and 2 references. The thought is so ridiculous it helps you breathe. At night, back at camp, you might lay the head down for inspection and watch other samurai nod. Someone claps you on the shoulder in an awkward attempt at camaraderie. You eat your rice while thinking about what it means to be rewarded for proof of killing. It is a weird mix of pride, yes, you survived, and revulsion, yes, at what cost? There are also practical consequences. A head that is poorly wrapped draws flies and gossip. One that is beautifully handled becomes a small monument, a grim objet d'art that proves your usefulness. In a society with few paper contracts, these grotesque tokens are the closest thing to a resume. So you learn the steps, take the proof, wrap it, present it, receive your wage. You steel yourself because the world rewards efficiency, even when that efficiency is macabre. You remind yourself that honor is complicated and survival is pragmatic. And when the ledger closes for the day, you go to bed with a stomach full of rice and a head in the corner because apparently in this era, trophies are not just for the mantle. Sleep well. Also, wash your hands. War camps run on gossip. People whisper about which daimyo is switching sides, who insulted whose mother, and whether your commander's cousin's friend is sleeping with a shrine maiden. Forget honor. This is the true fuel of the Sengoku era. Unverified rumors, whispered scandal, and speculation so wild it makes modern reality TV look like quiet meditation. You'd think everyone would be focused on, not dying. But no. In between polishing armor and dodging dysentery, everyone is tuned into camp radio, broadcasting on frequency. 100 hearsay, 0 fact. You sit by a fire chewing bitter greens when 2 ashigaru shuffle over like they're about to offer you a free vacation. Hey, one whispers, did you hear? Lord Saito might ditch our side and join the army we fought last week. You blink. What? Why? The man shrugs. Someone insulted his horse. You nod like this is normal workplace tension, because here it is. Let's be clear, betrayal is the national pastime. Alliances shift faster than you can say whose banner is that. Daimyo switch sides mid-war. Samurai defect for better rice deals. Entire clans wake up one morning and decide, actually, we hate our neighbours now. Let S burn their village. You start to wonder if anyone has genuine convictions or if this is just a very dangerous networking conference. Gossip spreads through camp like hot oil on cold water, fast, loud, unstoppable. There are no texts, no letters, no Twitter threads, just many, many small conversations that start with, "Don't tell anyone I said this," but followed by something absolutely unhinged, like, "Lord Wesugi is getting secret ninja support. Lord Tokugawa is actually 3 raccoons. Someone saw a ghost wearing full armor and sandals made of noodles. You laugh. You roll your eyes. Then 5 minutes later you whisper the same rumor to someone else because what if it's true? Uncertainty is normal. No one ever knows whose army is where, which castle is safe, or whether tomorrow's march is to a battlefield or a beach picnic. There is no map app telling you that your destination is a 7-hour walk with one scenic but impassable river. Instead, there is just gossip. They say the Takeda are coming from the north. No, the west. My uncle's friend's cousin saw them coming from the sky. You nod, confused. If armies could teleport, things would make a lot more sense. Sometimes the gossip is tactical. You hear that the enemy commander is low on supplies. You hear that they have new firearms. You hear that their horses are depressed. You hear that one of their elite warriors tripped on a garden rock and has emotionally recovered. Does any of this matter? Maybe. Maybe not. You repeat it all anyway because it feels good to know something, even if that something is a complete lie. Then there's personal gossip, and boy, it's a spicy. People whisper about who's courting whose sister, who's behind on rice taxes, who took an extra fish last night, who cried during training, and who definitely, absolutely saw a tengu in the trees. Whenever you ask for details on the tengu rumor, everyone suddenly remembers they have chores. The most popular gossip subject? Betrayal. Like constant betrayal. Did you hear that Clan A is secretly negotiating with Clan B? No way. Clan B betrayed Clan A last year. Exactly so they're even now. Everyone nods, as though this makes perfect emotional sense. You wonder how families keep up with all this drama. Imagine sending a letter home. "Dear Mother, we are currently teaming up with the people who killed Uncle June last year. Apparently they were chill now. Please send socks." Camp gossip also has a strange emotional rhythm. Bad news spreads instantly. We might die tomorrow. Good news takes its time. We were safe and getting extra rations. Oh, that was 3 days ago. We already ate them. Around the fire, the most dangerous game begins predicting which daimyo will betray whom next. Old samurai stroke their beards, muttering predictions like horse racing veterans. "I've got my money on the Mori defecting by summer." No way. They'll wait until harvest. Takeda will flip for sure, mark my words. Nobody knows. Everyone pretends they do. There is always that one guy who claims he has an inside connection. My cousin is a page for a guy who knows a monk who trained with a ninja who once served Oda Nobunaga. Wow. You have no idea what that means, but it sounds legitimate, so you repeat it later. Paranoia is the air you breathe. You start wondering if you'll wake up tomorrow under a different banner, saluting someone else's lord, pretending you've always been loyal to them. The flags change so often you start designing a reversible uniform. After weeks of whispers, you finally meet a samurai from another clan. You ask if the rumor about his commander defecting is true. He sighs. "I heard the same thing about your commander." You both stare at each other, realizing the only universal truth is that nobody knows anything. One evening, a rumour spreads that your lord has already betrayed you all and fled the province. Panic erupts, people yell, someone starts packing, another starts sobbing, a third begins eating all the rice he can find. Then, 10 minutes later, a messenger arrives shouting, "False alarm!" Everyone settles back down, pretending that you weren't panicking. You return to your mat, exhausted, your brain spinning. You realise there is no stability, no certainty, just endless speculation from men who smell like wet laundry and fear. So you lie back, stare at the stars, and wonder what gossip tomorrow will bring. A new alliance? A shocking betrayal? A raccoon wearing armour? Probably all three. Sleep well. If your clan still exists in the morning, that's a win. Your lord controls every aspect of your life. Not in a cute, my boss sends too many emails way, but in a this person owns your rice, house, job, future, and possibly your bones when you die way. A daimyo is essentially a feudal CEO, except instead of a performance review, he can just decide you're done. And by done, we mean fired from life territory. Your daimyo determines where you live, who you fight, what you eat, and whether you're allowed to keep breathing after lunch. You've never seen an HR department with sharper swords. One wrong move, wrong bow depth, wrong word choice, wrong haircut, and it could be curtains. Literal curtains. They'll just drape a white sheet over you and call it a day. Let S set the scene. You've been summoned to the Lord's presence. This is a big deal, but not necessarily a good one. You kneel on the tatami, palms sweating, forehead brushing the floor. You try to keep your breathing quiet because your lungs suddenly sound like offended geese. The room is dim, incense burns, fancy armor gleams from polished lacquer stands. The daimyo sits up front, radiating enough power to give you a stomach cramp. He says nothing for a full minute. You contemplate the meaning of life, loyalty, and whether you should be brought a gift. He finally speaks. His voice is calm, slow, and heavy with the weight of, "I could ruin you." He asks how the battle went. You mutter something about mud and arrows and maybe being brave. He nods thoughtfully. Is that a good sign? No idea. He gestures dismissively. You exhale. You're dismissed. You leave the room shaking like you just mainlined 10 espressos. Your daimyo is everything: your mentor, idol, paycheck distributor, and potential executioner. You practice bowing correctly for weeks so that when you greet him, you don't accidentally come off as arrogant or worse, casual. No one wants to die because they bent at the wrong angle. Imagine explaining that to your ancestors. His decisions determine the fate of thousands. He can raise you up, give you land, a better stipend, maybe even an honorary hat. Or he can demote you to rice field security guard, which is basically the medieval version of being transferred to the basement. Sometimes he rewards you generously new armor, a plot of land, a horse that hates you slightly less than your old one. But sometimes he gives you 8 ounces of rice and a pat on the head. You want to complain, but you also want to keep your head, so silence seems like the best option. Now let's talk communication. There isn't any. Your daimyo doesn't DM you with clarifying instructions. He sends messengers with vague orders like ride north, wait for the signal, protect the valley. What valley? For how long? From what? Nobody knows. It's like getting a work email that just says deliver. Panic is normal. Your daimyo is constantly paranoid about betrayal because that's the Sengoku-era game. Daimyo rise and fall like overly dramatic stock prices. One wrong alliance and suddenly your entire clan is toast. So he needs total loyalty. Your loyalty. And maybe your cousin-esque loyalty. So if he senses even a whiff of disobedience, he'll make an example of someone. Hopefully not you. Definitely not you. This means you must always show absolute obedience. If the daimyo says, take that castle, you take that castle. If he says, burn that village, you burn that village. If he says, bring me that peach from the mountaintop, you climb the mountain. You bring the peach. You don't ask questions, because questions lead to doubts. Doubts lead to suspicion. Suspicion leads to a sudden and unfortunate haircut at neck level. Some daimyo are charismatic wise, clever, poetic even. They make stirring speeches about the future, about unity, about honor. You listen, swept up in emotion, thinking, I would die for this man. Then, 2 days later, he makes an alliance with your sworn enemy and tells everyone to act natural. Other daimyo are less poetic. They speak little. Maybe they glare meaningfully. You still clap. Many daimyo love tea ceremony because nothing says we are at war like brewing a tiny cup of hot leaf water with perfect wrist movements. They sit in absolute silence, contemplating the rising steam. You sit, imagining death as a more comfortable alternative to sitting Caesar 1 minute longer. The daimyo-esque castle is both glamorous and terrifying. Inside, guards who glare at you. Armor displays that remind you of work, sliding doors that open ominously. Floors so polished you can see your shame reflected. You tiptoe around, scared to bump anything because replacing an antique vase might cost you your life. Even the walls feel like they are listening. They probably are. Someone is always listening. The daimyo-s family is also intimidating. His wife is elegant, refined, and could verbally eviscerate you with a single raised eyebrow. His kids run around, occasionally practicing with tiny swords. A disconcerting reminder that even the toddlers could be dangerous. You bow to everyone, just to be safe. And then there is politics. Every daimyo has rivals. Every rival has spies. Every spy has gossip. You worry constantly that something you say at camp might be twisted into treasonous nonsense. You weren't even talking politics, just complaining about your horse, and suddenly a rumor starts that you want to overthrow the clan. So you learn to keep your mouth shut and your head down. But here's the real twist. You need your daimyo. He rewards loyalty. He protects you, theoretically. He gives your life structure, meaning purpose, even if that purpose is done to die. You bow before him not only because you must, but because some part of you believes he can lead you through this mess of war, famine, betrayal, and uncomfortable footwear. So each morning, you wake up, polish your sword, try to look honorable, and silently pray that today is not the day your daimyo decides you have a bad attitude. And then you bow. Again. With feeling. Because in this world, loyalty is survival, and your daimyo is both storm and shelter. May he be merciful, or at least too distracted to notice you. You carry so many blades that you jingle like a murderous wind chime. Every time you take a step, something clinks, rattles, or quietly threatens to stab you in the thigh. You're less a person, and more a mobile kitchen set. If a chef fell into a forge and then was trained in violence, they would be you. You're a samurai, a warrior allegedly guided by honor, discipline, and aesthetics. But honestly, you're just loud, pointy, and inconvenient to hug. Let's take inventory. First, your katana, the elegant, beloved main character of your arsenal. It sits at your side like a loyal dog with boundary issues. It is sharp, soulful, and burdened with more symbolism than a teenager's poetry notebook. Then there's the wakizashi, the katana's inseparable sidekick. If the katana is the older sibling who went to a good school, the wakizashi is the one who never left home and plays bass in a band with 2 horse groomers. You wear it all the time, even indoors, because rules say so. Also, you'll need it if things go badly emotionally, politically, or stomach-wise. You've also got your tanto, your tiny blade. It is basically the angry pocket knife of the samurai world. perfect for close quarters combat, cutting rope and peeling fruit if you have fruit which you don tea. That's already 3 swords. 3. You only have 2 hands. But we are not done. You also carry a yumi, the longbow. It is as tall as you are and more dramatic. When slung over your shoulder, it bangs into everything. Door frames, tent poles, unsuspecting peasants. You apologize constantly like a clumsy tourist with a selfie stick. Arrows. You carry a quiver full of them, each whispering, "Are we the last thing someone sees today?" One bumps you in the ribs every time you bend over, which is often, because your armor weighs the same as a small refrigerator. Speaking of heavy, you might also lug a yari, a spear. Because swords aren't enough, your daimyo expects you to carry a long stick with a very sharp point. Good for keeping enemies far away. Also good for tripping over while trying to get out of bed at dawn. And if you're fancy, really fancy, you might have a naginata. It's a polearm with a curved blade on the end. Excellent for slicing through ranks of enemies or harvesting imaginary wheat. It's also terrible for navigating crowded spaces. You turn too quickly, and everyone around you ducks. Sometimes you carry a tesson, an iron war fan. Yes, a fan. Because in between dodging bullets and stray arrows, you might get sweaty. But the tesson isn't just for cooling off, it can deflect blades, smack rude people, and signal silently during battle. It's a tactical accessory, like violent jewelry. All of this gear turns walking into a circus act. You shuffle through camp sounding like a drawer full of knives someone forgot to close. Every weapon demands respect and also threatens to chop you into salad if you make one wrong move. Sitting down? A nightmare. You must position your swords just so, angle your spear away from the fire, keep the bow off the ground, and pray nothing falls onto your lap. If you sneeze, at least one blade will slip and try to claim your kneecap. Even sleeping is dangerous. You lay your sword beside you like a bedtime buddy. You hug your wakizashi like a nervous teddy bear. The spear rests against your tent pole, waiting to stab the next person who enters uninvited, or you, if you roll too enthusiastically. Any wrong movement, and your bedding becomes a pin cushion. Bathing? Huh. Bathing with 3 swords and a bow is like trying to shower holding a microwave. Most samurai just wash inconsistently and hope honor kills bacteria. Now, let us discuss traveling. On the road, you carry all your weapons because who knows when bandits, rival clans, or angry raccoons will attack. The load makes your horse think you're overpacking for a vacation. You jingle down the path, scaring birds and alerting enemies a mile away. Stealth? Not an option. You sound like a blacksmith tap dancing inside a toolbox. And yet, despite the inconvenience, your weapons are your identity. They tell the world who you serve, what rank you hold, and how dangerous you are on a scale from mildly inconvenient to absolutely terrifying. They're your resume, your status symbol, your entire LinkedIn profile. Imagine meeting another samurai. He bows, you bow. You both eye each other's blades like fashion critics. Oh, a mid-16th century katana. Lovely curve. Bold Tsuba choice. You nod politely and pretend your wakizashi scabbard isn't cracked for the 3rd time this week. Weapons must be polished constantly. If they rust, you fail. If they dull, you fail harder. So you spend hours every day maintaining them, whispering encouragement to your katana, apologizing to your tanto for ignoring it, and pretending your bowstring isn't a fraying from overwork. With this many tools of violence, you might expect confidence. Nope. Mostly you worry that you'll trip and stab yourself while trying to impress someone. Still, there is an undeniable comfort. These weapons protect you. They represent your purpose. Even when life is chaos, when daimyo betray you, when rain won't stop, when Kenji with the matchlock is ruining everything, your blades are still there, clinking, rattling, stabbing the occasional shrub. You're basically a walking cutlery drawer, and somehow that feels right. Now, careful, don't sit down too fast. That spear is at a weird angle. Meals are dried rice, pickles, and despair. Once, someone brings fish. It tastes like it lost a fight weeks ago. Delicious. Food on campaign is a complicated emotional journey. The first step is denial. Your brain refuses to accept that this is dinner. The second step is bargaining. Maybe if you add pickles, it will taste like something. The final step is acceptance. This is your life now. Congratulations. Welcome to the bland dimension. Your daily rations come as a small cloth bundle of rice that's been dried so aggressively it might have gone through trauma counseling. You pour hot water over it, wait, and hope it turns into something edible. It doesn't. It becomes a lukewarm paste with the texture of wet chalk and the flavor of also wet chalk. You eat it anyway because calories are the only thing keeping your organs from quitting. Pickles are the highlight of the meal. You savor each bite like it's a rare delicacy. The salty crunch ignites your taste buds just long enough to remind you what joy used to feel like. You share a pickle with a fellow samurai and bond instantly, two exhausted warriors united by the fleeting memory of flavor. Sometimes, if the spirits are generous, you get miso, and not the kind of miso that sends you into a poetic trance. No, this is battlefield miso, watery, confused, and suspiciously gritty. You sip. You wonder if the grit is sand or just bad luck. You decide you don't care. Warmth is warmth. Dining on campaign looks nothing like romanticized depictions. Nobody sits elegantly on tatami mats. Instead, you squat in the mud while rain tries its best to season your food. The fire you cooked over is already dying because the wood was wet. Smoke mingles with steam from your rice. You smell vaguely like burned socks. The social environment is bleakly comforting. Everyone eats in silence because nobody has the energy to complain. The soundscape is slurping, quiet, sighing. Someone choking on a bone they didn't know was in there. Occasional distant explosions. Someone always has a story about better food back home. My mother makes the best grilled eel, crispy on the outside, soft inside. You glare at him. He shuts up. Then there's dried fish. One day, a merchant arrives with a basket of freshly dried fish. You trade 2 days' rice for one. You take a bite. It tastes like a long-lost sea monster. The flavor hits you in waves. Salt disappointment. A weird smoky note. Panic. You chew. You keep chewing. It never ends. You wonder if this is your life now, slowly becoming a fish. Sometimes battlefield spoils include actual meat. A deer, a boar, a mysterious animal the cook refuses to identify. Nobody asks questions. Nobody wants answers. You eat quickly before it escapes again. Cooking is communal. Soldiers huddle around a pot, throwing in whatever can be obtained. Carrots, rice, sadness, no spices, salt if you're lucky. A handful of herbs someone found growing near the latrine, not ideal. You stir and hope someone with a sense of taste shows up. They'd tea. The meal ends when the pot is empty or someone starts crying, whichever happens first. Let us talk table manners. There are none. Nobody cares if you slurp loudly. Nobody cares if you drop rice. Everyone cares if you eat too slowly because the guy next to you will absolutely take your portion. Protect your bowl at all costs. Utensils, maybe chopsticks, maybe your fingers, maybe a broken arrow shaft in a pinch. One day, a higher-ranking samurai shares his personal stash. Sesame seeds. Sesame. He sprinkles them on his rice like gold dust. You watch in awe. He offers you a pinch. You cry internally. This is the peak of culinary experience. You vow to name your first child Sesame if you survive. There are horror stories. A guy once left his rice unattended. A raccoon stole it. The raccoon mocked him. Another time, someone tried to eat wild mushrooms. He saw ghosts for 3 days. No one knows if the mushrooms were poisonous or extremely friendly. And tea, oh tea, it's as simple, warm, and occasionally tasty. You drink it to feel alive. Sometimes it says bitter because the leaves are low quality. Sometimes it tastes like grass that has been stepped on emotionally. But when you sip hot tea after a long march, surrounded by tired comrades, the world feels less hostile. Still, the food situation is a constant reminder of your unglamorous existence. Forget feasts, forget banquets. You're lucky if dinner doesn't actively attack you. As you scrape the last grains from your bowl, you sigh. The night is cold, the ground is hard, your stomach is half full of salty mush. But you survived another day, fueled by carbs and stubbornness, and tomorrow it is rice again. Sleep well, and dream of seasoning. Everything is damp, your clothes, your bedding, your soul. The Sengoku sky has only 2 moods: raining and thinking about raining. Sometimes it gives you a polite drizzle. Sometimes it dumps water like it is trying to wash the entire province off the map. Either way, you're wet. Permanently. You are basically a wandering teabag armed with swords. You wake before dawn, startled by the sound of droplets hammering your tent like they are filing a noise complaint against your existence. You reach a hand out and touch your blanket. It feels like a damp sponge that smells faintly of mildew and regret. The inside of your armor is wet. The outside is wet. This raises the question, why even bother owning armor? If someone stabs you, the blade will probably just slip right through the soft, rain-soaked fabric of your dignity. Your bedding? A swamp. Your socks? Also a swamp. Your horse is starting to grow moss on its back. You stand, stretch, and feel your joints creak not with heroic tension, but with the sadness of a wet door hinge. The camp is covered in puddles, each one perfectly placed to ruin your day. You step in something, unsure if it's mud or soup. You don't ask questions. Your tent collapses occasionally, because the poles were made of wood that now resembles noodles. You rebuild it. It collapses again. You consider just living under a canoe. At least canoes have commitment. There's mold everywhere on your boots, on your scabbard, probably on your emotional well-being. The mold has become such a constant companion that it deserves its own introduction. Name, mold. Occupation, ruining your stuff. Hobbies, growing, spreading, judging. You accept mold as a roommate. You give it personality. You talk to it when you're lonely. Hey buddy, how was your day? It never answers, but you feel seen. Rain changes everything. Fires struggle to stay lit, turning every meal into a cold rice and sadness combo plate. Cooking becomes a race between heat and water. You sit there shielding the embers with your hands like you're guarding a baby pigeon. The fire sputters, spits smoke in your face, and then dies with a tiny hiss. You sigh deeply and eat damp pickles. Sitting down is a gamble. The ground looks solid. It isn't. You lower yourself carefully, only to realize you're sinking. Slowly. Elegantly. Like a tragic rice cake dissolving in soup. You accept your fate. At least you'll be partially submerged and free from decisions. Your armor becomes a rust festival. Every surface is speckled with orange freckles. You polish it in the rain because that's your entire life now fighting moisture. Moisture is your real enemy, not rival samurai, not guns, just endless, merciless humidity. Your sword, also wet. You try drying it with your sleeve, but your sleeve is wetter than your sword. You try the other sleeve. Same story. You consider wringing out your clothing, but there is so much water it would cause a flood, so you just keep wiping it, hoping friction alone creates some kind of miracle. Rain does things to your psyche. You become philosophical. Why am I here? Is honor worth mouldy socks? If I fall in this puddle, will I live here now? You look at your reflection in a puddle and see a soggy stranger. You nod at him. He nods back. Mutual understanding. The camp smells interesting. A mix of wet wool, smoke, feet, and sadness. The scent clings to everything, including your thoughts. You carry it with you like a curse, arriving in new villages smelling like someone lost a battle with a bucket of pond water. Battlefields are worse. The mud grabs your feet with desperate affection. Each step feels like you're walking through glue. Arrows stick harmlessly into the ground because the ground is basically pudding. Horses slip, warriors slip, everyone accidentally tackles each other. No one looks cool. Sometimes your lord orders an attack in this weather. You march, you slip, you curse. You imagine being a farmer instead. Farmers also get wet, but at least they have vegetables to eat while crying. The only shelter is questionable. A thatched hut? Sure, but you share it with 3 other samurai, a horse, and 6 buckets collecting drips. You lie on the floor listening to rain serenade you with its greatest hits. Drip drip, remix, drip of distant thunder. You almost fall asleep until a cold drop hits your forehead like nature flicking you. You open your eyes and reconsider your entire life. Sometimes you try to dry things near a fire. You hang clothing on sticks. It steams. It smells worse. You put it back on anyway and hope the heat kills whatever life is forming. It doesn't. Now your shirt is both damp and hot, the worst combination. Rain also loves to play therapist. It forces you to sit still, listening to endless dripping. You think about your mistakes. You think about Kenji with a matchlock. You think about that girl in the village who laughed at your poem. You think about buying a boat and sailing away, but you are scared of water now. Everything aches. Dampness seeps into your bones. Cold crawls up your spine like a feral cat. When night falls, the rain falls harder. You huddle under your blanket, which is essentially a cold tortilla. You whisper prayers to the gods, asking for sun. The gods respond with more rain. You sigh. Mold grows. Morning brings more rain. You stand, damp and defeated, ready to face another day of soggy survival. At least you're not alone. Everyone else is equally miserable, your comrades, your horse, your mold friend. Misery loves company, especially when that company is mildewed, so you take a deep breath, you adjust your soggy armor, you squint through the drizzle, and you march. Squish, squish, squish. Because in Sengoku, Japan, rain is to weather it as a lifestyle. You perform the tea ritual trying to be serene, but your brain screams, "Don't spill, don't choke, don't breathe too loud, don't make eye contact, don't exist wrong." Welcome to the tea ceremony, one of the few peaceful activities you're expected to master while still sweating through every layer of clothing you own. It's the calm before the panic, a little oasis of quiet in a world otherwise composed of shouting, rainfall, and people enthusiastically dismembering each other. And yet, for you, it's somehow more stressful than battle. At least on the battlefield, your mistakes don't involve accidentally insulting 3 centuries of tradition, because you stirred clockwise instead of counterclockwise. The room is silent. Not metaphorical silence, actual silence. The kind where you can hear your heartbeat trying to file a complaint. You sit in Caesar, kneeling and folding your legs underneath you until your feet go numb. You attempt to appear composed. In reality, you are one muscle tremor away from face-planting directly into the tatami. The host, a senior samurai or maybe someone who has perfected the art of judging silently, moves with precise grace. They pour water into a bowl with the careful attention of someone defusing a bomb. You watch, mesmerized, then terrified, then mesmerized again. Steam curls upward like a soft ghost. The tea bowl is passed to you. It is warm, too warm. You panic and nearly drop it. You clutch it like it contains the meaning of life. Everything must be done with ritual precision. Rotate the bowl properly. Bow with humility. Sip slowly. Express appreciation with the correct nuance. One wrong move and you are pretty sure you'll be reassigned to ditch digging forever. Or worse, your daimyo might think you are uncultured. Being killed is terrible. But being considered uncultured? Unthinkable. You take a sip. It tastes bitter. Not unpleasant, but assertive, like it wants to tell you something philosophical. Something about accepting impermanence or letting go of earthly cravings. You think the tea is telling you to relax or surrender. Hard to tell. The host speaks softly about harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. You nod, trying to summon harmony. Your leg twitches violently. You definitely do not have harmony. Meanwhile, your mind drifts. Not peacefully, more like a shopping cart with a broken wheel. You think about whether your armor is rusting outside if Kenji remembered to tie up the horses, how embarrassing it would be to sneeze right now, if the guy across from you is judging your grip on the bowl, whether war will break out mid-sip and ruin everything. You try to focus on the moment, but focusing feels like trying to nail jelly to a tree. The host lifts the kettle, steam billowing in elegant spirals. You wonder if your soul is supposed to rise with it. Instead, your stomach growls loudly. Everyone hears. The room pretends it didn't happen. You die internally. As the ceremony continues, you start to relax just a little. Your breath slows. Your heartbeat stops trying to reenact a drum solo. The soft whisking sound of powdered tea being mixed is strangely soothing. You think, hey, maybe I can be calm. Maybe this is working. Then your foot falls asleep. Utterly, completely. Pins and needles attack you from shin to toes. You hold still, trying not to scream. It feels like your leg is being chewed on by tiny invisible wolves. You bow politely, nearly tipping forward into the tea bowl. The conversation is gentle talk of nature, of seasons, of impermanence. You nod sagely while thinking about weatherproofing your socks. You pretend to understand the poem being recited, something about wind, or leaves, or taxes. You don't know. You bow again. Everyone bows. Someone coughs delicately. Time becomes a concept with no clear boundaries. Eventually the ceremony ends. You're both grateful and afraid to stand. You try. Your leg fails instantly. You collapse halfway up and catch yourself with quiet panic. Everyone politely looks away. The universal signal for we pretend we saw nothing. You shuffle out of the room like someone walking on marbles. The fresh air feels like freedom and judgment. You breathe deeply, grateful for survival. And here's the twist. Despite the panic, the numb legs, and the existential dread, something about the ceremony lingers. A strange sense of peace, like your soul was briefly ironed flat. The world outside is still chaos, rain, mud, rice, betrayal, but the memory of warm tea and quiet bows gives you strength. It's the gentle reminder that life isn't only about fighting. Sometimes it's about sitting uncomfortably and pretending you understand art. And in its own strange way, that's enough. Now go stretch your legs before they fall off. There's no clubbing, no karaoke. Just you, a silent moon, and intrusive thoughts about how tomorrow might be pointy. Night is supposed to be relaxing. In theory, this is when the world quiets down and you finally get to breathe. In practice, however, Samurai Nighttime is basically a meditation retreat hosted by anxiety. The war camp dims, the fires sputter into glowing embers, and everyone settles into a tense stillness. It's quiet, not peaceful quiet, but exam room quiet, where everyone is thinking very hard about something they didn't want to think about. You sit, knees tucked to your chest, staring up at the moon like it owes you money. Its pale glow washes over your armor and makes everything feel cooler, not in the stylish sense, but in the "I wish I had a blanket that wasn't a damp" sense. The stars are beautiful, scattered like spilled rice across the night sky. They'd bring you comfort if you weren't busy wondering whether tomorrow will involve arrows, betrayal, or a surprise transfer to the afterlife. Around you, the camp murmurs, men whisper, someone coughs, a horse sneezes. That's the nightlife. Sometimes, if a samurai feels especially wild, he tells a quiet story by the fire, some tale about a past battle, a childhood memory, or that time a monkey stole all his lunch. But the stories stop early. Too much noise might attract attention from the wrong people. You never quite know who's listening. Could be a friend, could be a spy, could be your horse plotting. So you sit with your thoughts, which is the true horror. They are loud. They have opinions. They swirl like smoke. Will your daimyo betray someone tomorrow? Will it be you? Why did your cousin look at you like that earlier? Should you have polished your sword more? Did you bow wrong to that monk last week? Intrusive thoughts arrive like unwanted party guests. What if you die tomorrow? What if rain never stops? What if pickles run out? You stare harder at the moon, hoping it answers. It does not. The moon is on break. Instead, you sharpen your sword by lantern light, because nothing calms the nerves like running a whetstone over a razor intended for potential strangers. The repetitive motion is soothing shk, 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 but every scrape reminds you, this blade is meant for use. It's not decoration. Tomorrow you might swing it with intent. Tomorrow someone else might swing back harder. You might share a drink warm sake that tastes like quiet courage. You sip slowly, letting it ease your chest. It doesn't help. Worries just get tipsy. The elders sometimes chant sutras nearby. Their voices float through the camp in low resonant waves. You're not sure if it's comforting or eerie. Maybe both. It's like listening to someone sing a lullaby about tax deadlines. If you're lucky, you sit near a small fire. If you're unlucky, smoke chooses you as its favorite target. It slaps your face over and over. Your eyes water. You accept it. This is entertainment. Nighttime isn't only mental, it is physical discomfort too. The ground is hard. Rocks jab your hips. The cold crawls in and sets up a long-term lease. Your blanket is old. It smells like wet dog and disappointment. You try lying still, but every angle hurts. You shift silently so as not to disturb others. You pretend this is fine. It is not fine. Sleep? Very optional. Maybe you dream. Maybe you don tea. Maybe you close your eyes for 1 second and suddenly it's morning, and someone is yelling about marching. Sometimes nighttime brings visitors, owls crying from the trees, foxes skulking at the edge of camp, couriers arriving breathless with news that everything has changed. Some daimyo decide the night is a great time to relocate, as if lack of sunlight improves navigation, so you get up silently and shuffle through the dark with the rest of your comrades, trying not to stab anyone accidentally with your personal arsenal. If you stay in place, you might practice calligraphy by lantern light. The brush glides over paper as you try to copy elegant characters. You fail. The kanji looks stressed, like it's screaming for help. You sigh. You go back to staring at the moon. Night is also the time when emotions sneak in. You think of home. You picture the rice fields, the garden, the house cat who tolerated you. You recall laughter by the hearth. You remember warmth. You wonder how everyone is doing. You wonder if you'll ever see them again. The silence amplifies everything, both fear and nostalgia. Sometimes you talk to a friend. Whispered jokes keep you sane. Someone always tries humour, describing how ridiculous your wet socks felt, or how they slipped in mud and accidentally invented a new dance. You laugh quietly. It helps. Laughter always helps. Eventually the fire dies. The sky darkens further. The camp settles into uneasy stillness. You clutch your sword like a security blanket because you know sleep is a gamble. Something might happen while you're unconscious, and you prefer to go down fighting rather than dreaming of pickles. And so you lie there, eyes drifting shut, thinking too much, thinking about tomorrow, thinking about honor, thinking about what victory even means when you can get dry. The moon watches, the wind whispers, your thoughts echo. Samurai nightlife. It's less party hard, more ponder mortality until you get tired. Fun, in a quiet, terrifying way. You write to your family about honor and duty but really just miss your mattress. And by miss your mattress, you mean you ache for the lumpy straw sack back home that at the time you swore was giving you chronic back pain. Now, compared to sleeping on mud, rocks, and the creeping sensation of insects filing rental paperwork under your blanket, that lumpy straw sack feels like a luxury spa mattress with heated stones. Funny how perspective works. By the flicker of a smoky camp lantern, you hunch over paper that cost more than your last 3 meals combined. Your brush is shaking not from emotion, but because your fingers are numb from holding a spear all day. You dip the brush into ink, trying to form elegant strokes, but your hand cramps instantly, turning your handwriting into something that looks less like kanji and more like the scribbles of an over-caffeinated raccoon. You begin with the classics. My honourable father, I hope this letter finds you in health and peace. I am serving our Lord with steadfast spirit translation. I have trench foot. I am hungry. And Kenji keeps snoring directly into my ear. Proper etiquette demands that samurai letters be poetic, imbued with grace, beauty, and emotional restraint. The result? You end up writing things like, the moon tonight is serene, like the memory of home. What you mean is, it's cold, I'm scared, and I would commit minor tax fraud for a hot bath. You try to strike a balance, too honest, and your family panics, too poetic, and they think you're doing great, which you are not. So you sprinkle some truth. The ground is wet, and then you bury it under flowery nonsense about cherry blossoms and destiny so no one worries. Your mother probably reads your letters aloud, biting her lip, nodding at your flowery metaphors. Your father strokes his chin and says things like, "Ah." Yes, the boy grows wise. Meanwhile, you're using your armor as a makeshift umbrella and forgetting what dry feet feel like. Sometimes you get responses. They arrive weeks or months later, carried by couriers whose legs must be powered by raw fear or absurd dedication. These letters smell faintly of homewood smoke, tatami, maybe pickles. Your mother asks if you're eating well. You lie. Yes, mother. I eat heartily and with joy. Translation. I had wet rice and sadness again. Please send pickles. Your father encourages you to bring honor to the family. You stare at that line for a long time, pondering the irony of chasing honor while simultaneously trying not to trip into a latrine. You imagine telling him the truth. Honor is nice, but have you tried sleeping past sunrise? Instead, you write, I strive daily to serve with courage. You pause. You wipe rain off your page. The ink smears. The letter looks like it's crying. Sometimes you try to be honest. You write, I miss the sound of our hearth and our neighbour's obnoxious rooster. Before you can stop yourself, real feelings spill onto the page your worry about the next battle, your fear of dying nameless. You're longing to eat rice that doesn't crunch unexpectedly. Then you cross everything out because samurai aren't supposed to show weakness. You rewrite the line as, "The sunrise at camp reminds me of home." Sure, if home smelled like wet socks and smoke, then there are love letters. If you have a sweetheart back home, your letters get extra dramatic. You write about fate, longing, the moon connecting your souls while leaving out the part where you haven't bathed in 4 days and look like a mouldy scarecrow. You imagine them reading your letter by a warm fire, cheeks glowing, heart fluttering. Meanwhile, you are sitting in the rain, nose dripping, surrounded by men arguing about whether mud counts as soup. You sign off with appropriate honor, with unwavering spirit your devoted son, who definitely isn't crying. Then you fold the letter carefully, knowing it might never reach home. Maybe a messenger loses it. Maybe a river claims it. Maybe it arrives after you do one way or another. But writing does something unexpected. It steadies your mind. The act of putting brush to paper anchors you. For a few moments, you're not a soggy warrior with mouldy socks, you're a voice across distance, connected to the people who remember you as you were before all this mud. Beside you, other samurai write their own letters. Some mutter poem fragments. Some stare into space, too exhausted to form words. One guy keeps asking how to spell rice like he has forgotten. Everyone is tired. Everyone is scared. Everyone misses home. When you finish, you sand the ink, fold the paper, and seal it. You stare at it, feeling the weight of everything unsaid. You hand it to a courier who looks both heroic and annoyed. You whisper, pleased and to lose it. He shrugs. Night comes deeper. You lie down. You think of the people, waiting for your words. You wonder how many more letters you'll write, and how many will make it. For now, it is enough to know that somewhere, someone might read your words by lamplight and think of you. Try to sleep. Tomorrow is still pointy. If you fail or dishonor your lord, you may be required to disembowel yourself. Yes, that's the policy. It is not written in a handbook, those aren't a thing yet, but everyone knows the rule. Fall short, step wrong, or get caught on the wrong side of politics, and suddenly you are staring at a very sharp knife and an uncomfortable invitation. Forget performance improvement plans. This is the performance stop plan. Permanently. You've probably been dreading this conversation ever since you became a samurai. It is the ultimate reminder that, in this job, loyalty and reputation weigh more than your pulse. Seppuku, also known as harakiri, is seen as a way to preserve or restore your honor. The logic is, if you messed up, you can still exit heroically by demonstrating your courage in the most painful way imaginable. It's like being allowed to resign right before you are fired, except the resignation involves your insides going outside. If your daimyo or sometimes your own conscience decides seppuku is required, the process is surprisingly formal. A ceremony is arranged. Invitations are implied. You dress neatly. You bathe. You write your final poem, called a jisei, which needs to be brief, tasteful, and ideally deep. You try to think of something profound. The moon sets. Dew remains. My rice stipend was too small. Close enough. Friends gather quietly. Not the hooray kind of gathering, not that you'd expect party hats. Everyone kneels, solemn. Incense burns. You can practically taste the awkward tension. 2 guards stand nearby, not to stop you, but to keep onlookers respectable. This is, after all, a serious moment. A highly choreographed, adult-rated PowerPoint presentation of your guts. Then comes your keishakunin, your designated second. This person is a close friend, a loyal companion, or maybe just the only guy with a sword who likes you enough not to flinch. His job is to end things quickly after you make the first cut. It's a grim kindness. You show resolve. He spares you prolonged agony. In modern terms, he's your emergency exit, your final co-worker doing you a solid. You kneel, blade in hand. The tanto or wakizashi glints in the candlelight. You breathe. The room holds its breath. You perform the motion, usually a horizontal cut across the abdomen, showing bravery and self-discipline. Pain surges real and blinding. Before it overwhelms you, the keishakunin steps forward and strikes, aiming to decapitate cleanly. A perfect cut demonstrates his skill. A messy one is everyone's worst day. The whole ritual is rooted in ideals: honor, loyalty, moral integrity. By facing agony without flinching, you prove the strength of your spirit. It sounds noble when poets say it. In practice, it's a brutal, tragic reality proof that the system cares more about symbolic purity than human comfort. This is a culture where your inner resolve must be visible literally. Not all seppuku is punishment. Sometimes samurai perform it preemptively to protest injustice or express loyalty when their lord dies. You might choose to follow your daimyo into death junshi because living without him feels dishonorable. A poetic way of saying, I am with you, boss, even on your last day. And then there's battlefield seppuku done to avoid capture. Falling alive into enemy hands is considered an absolute humiliation. Better to die by your own blade than to be paraded around like someone's very sad trophy. From the outside, the whole practice looks like the world's worst exit interview. But within the samurai worldview, seppuku is the ultimate expression of self-mastery. It says, you can take away my position, land, name, but you can take away my dignity. It's a dramatic mic drop. A painful, literal one. Of course, modern minds might wonder why anyone would agree to this. But in Sengoku, Japan, the warrior code Bushido wrapped your identity so tightly around loyalty and honor that death could feel like the only clean solution to failure. Your reputation lives on. Your family might be spared punishment, even granted respect. It's the worst possible scholarship program. Before the ritual, people often drink sake, sharing quiet moments. Some say final words. Maybe you joke with your second, "Hey Dante, miss." He tries to smile. Nobody laughs. When it is over, your body is tended to with utmost respect. Your sword is wrapped, your poem preserved. Household altars will hold your memory. Your story will be told. Some will say you were courageous. Others will quietly wonder whether the system asks too much. They aren't wrong. And the camp goes on. War continues. Rain still falls. Somewhere, Kenji still snores. Everyone reflects. Life is fragile. Honor is sharp. And tomorrow someone else might face the same final review. So you breathe. You live carefully. You bow correctly. And you hope just a little that your next evaluation doesn't come with a tanto. If your daimyo dies or is ousted, congratulations, you're now a wandering, jobless warrior. It feels a bit like getting laid off during an economic downturn, except the economy is civil war, your resume is covered in bloodstains, and unemployment benefits are just hope nobody kills you. Being a Ronin sounds romantic in movies, but in reality it's the medieval version of floating between gigs, couch surfing, and telling strangers, I am between lords right now. One day, you're a proud samurai armor polished, stipend secure, a horse that at least tolerates you. The next, your daimyo loses a regional turf war, falls on his sword, or gets betrayed by someone named absolutely trustworthy friend, and poof, your job title evaporates. There is no transfer, no severance package, just a gentle cosmic farewell and a shove into the harsh wilds of freelance warfare. As a Ronin, your status plummets faster than your dignity in a mud puddle. Samurai society revolves around hierarchy and loyalty. No lord, no status. You go from respectable warrior to sword guy loitering near the market, overnight. Peasants eye you with suspicion. Merchants avoid you because you look like someone who might pay with honor instead of silver. Your armor still fits. Your swords are still sharp, but social doors slam shut. You wander from village to village, hoping anyone needs your skills. Farming? No, you don't know how. Babysitting? Probably not. Swording things? Yes. But surprisingly, most families don't need someone to professionally sword things at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. So you take whatever work you can find. Bodyguarding, courier jobs, maybe escorting a wealthy merchant who keeps calling you Ron like you're his personal errand boy. It is humiliating, but at least there is rice. Sometimes. Other times, work dries up and you spend your days sleeping under questionable roofs, barns, shrines, an abandoned tea house filled with cats. The cats judge you. Even the cats think you've fallen off. If you're desperate, you might join a band of other Ronin. But this isn't a glamorous superhero team. It is a group of mildly depressed, overly armed men who fight over scraps of rice and cry quietly at night. One guy brags about being elite guard to a famous daimyo. Another claims he single-handedly held off 300 enemies. You nod politely. Everyone is lying. People think Ronin drift with poetic grace, like wandering poets of death. In reality, you trudge. Your socks have holes. Your hair is tangled. You smell like rain and disappointment. Children point. Adults whisper. You pretend it doesn't hurt. It hurts. Some Ronin turn to banditry because if nobody will pay you to sword things, you can still sword things for yourself. You raid travelers, steal supplies, and hide in the mountains. It isn't honorable, but neither is starving. Your ancestors don't judge. Probably, maybe. Others throw themselves into mercenary work. Wars are constant during this era, so freelance violence is a booming industry. You sign on with whatever daimyo is hiring. You try not to think too hard about how loyalty now feels like renting your soul. The pay varies. The risk never does. The best outcome for a Ronin: find a new lord. It is the medieval equivalent of getting hired in your field. But this is nearly impossible. Potential employers eye you suspiciously. Why did your last lord die? Was it your fault? Do you fight well? Do you smell like mildew every day or only on weekends? There are interviews, formal evaluations, tests of skill. Sometimes they accept you. Sometimes they thank you for your time and escort you off the premises with sharp, pointed swords. Marriage prospects? Non-existent. Families want stability. You're a sword with anxiety issues, hard sell. There's always Edo where some Ronin try to reinvent themselves. They teach martial arts, take odd jobs, or sit around writing mediocre poetry. You tell yourself you're between opportunities. You tell others you're independent. Deep down, you worry you peaked at 19. The loneliness is profound. Samurai life is communal training, serving, fighting side by side. But as a Ronin, you drift. You miss the familiarity of camp life, even the constant yelling and threat of arrows. At night, you make a small fire and think of home or whatever home was before everything fell apart. If you are lucky, you meet other gentle souls. Maybe a farmer offers a meal. Maybe a monk offers a place to sleep. You repay their kindness however you can, chopping wood, fixing a fence, sharing stories of battles that feel distant, dreamlike. Sometimes rumour spreads of Ronin forming a group to avenge their fallen lord. It is honourable, tragic, beautiful. You wonder if you'd do the same. You wonder if you have the strength, or if vengeance is just one more road to nowhere. But there's a strange freedom too. Without a lord, you answer only to your conscience. No one orders you to march. No one commands your death. You choose your path even if that path is muddy, lonely, and poorly funded. In the end, being Ronin is bittersweet. You are still a samurai, still bound by honor, but life is harder. The world is colder. You walk alone, sword at your side, future unknown. But you keep going, because that's what warriors do even when unemployed. You wander around hoping someone needs a violent intern. There's nothing quite like the dignity of drifting through mud-soaked villages, awkwardly advertising yourself like a walking murder LinkedIn. Your skill set is very specific. Swords. Also, swords, minor horseback, significant trauma. You stroll in, offer a stiff bow and ask, "Hello, would you by any chance require a highly motivated professional with 10 years of stabbing experience?" Most people respond with the same polite confusion you get when someone shows up at a workplace carrying a foam sword, except your sword is real and you absolutely know how to use it. Your resume is your armor. Your cover letter is the way you kneel. Your references are dead. Mostly because that is how references tend to end up in civil war. You mention this delicately. You start with obvious places: a castle, a local lord, any important-looking person with too many flags and not enough guards. You introduce yourself to the gate guard, who looks you up and down and says, "We'll pass your name along. That's Sengoku Japan for no." Still, you leave a wooden name tag carved with dramatic characters and hope someone calls. It is the closest thing to leaving a business card, except instead of listing phone numbers, it says, "We'll fight for rice." Some travel okay. The job market is bleak. There are too many displaced samurai and not enough daimyo to hire them. Every lord is picky now. They want experience, loyalty, maybe emotional stability, but that last one is optional. What they really want is someone who won't betray them mid-battle. There is no test for this. It is all vibes. If your vibe is might run away, you're done. So you try networking. In a war camp, networking involves leaning near a fire, sharpening your blade in a way that looks both casual and competent. You hope someone notices your excellent edge maintenance and says, "Hey, friend, want to kill people for us?" But mostly you sit silently while other Ronin trade empty boasts about how they once fought off 10 men using only a spoon. Job fares onto thing, but rumours are, someone always claims that a minor lord in the next province is hiring. You pack up your few belongings, 2 blades, 3 memories, and 1 half-mouldy rice ball and walk for days. You arrive sweaty, hopeful and underpaid. Then you learn the position was filled yesterday by someone's cousin. You thank them, bow, and internally scream. Sometimes a lord will give you a trial. They hand you a spear, point you toward a forest and say, "Bandits live there. Fix it." You fight the bandits. You come back missing a sleeve and half a tooth. The lord nods. He'll consider your application. He never sends word. Other trials are bizarre. One daimyo tests loyalty by making applicants hold a lit candle while he recites poetry. If you flinch even slightly, you're out. Another tests sword skill by having you cut a straw target while blindfolded while someone throws rocks. This feels less like evaluation and more like hazing, but you need the rice. Sometimes you get interviewed. The daimyo sits on a dais surrounded by bored attendants. He asks deep questions like, "Why do you seek service? What strengths do you bring? Can you kill without hesitation?" You try to answer thoughtfully, but your brain is sludge. You say something generic about loyalty and destiny. You forget to keep your eyes down. Rejected. Every so often, someone actually hires you. You receive a modest stipend still in rice, naturally, and a place to sleep which is only partially haunted. You treasure it. You perform incredibly average guard duty. Sometimes no one attacks, and you wonder if you even still count as a samurai. But more often, the job search is cruel. Villagers treat you like a threat. Monks offer vague advice. Merchants pretend not to see you. Your clothes fray. Your sandals dissolve. Your hair evolves into its final chaotic form, unintentional mountain hermit. Desperate, you consider branching out. Maybe you could teach swordsmanship? You try. Students show up for a week, giggle at your stern attitude, then vanish. One kid beats you with a bamboo stick and you wonder if teaching is truly your calling. You consider farming. No. You remember that you killed a plant just by looking at it once. You consider poetry. You write a haiku. Hungry and alone. Rice costs more than loyalty. Sword not paid enough, it doesn't sell. At your lowest, you wander the roadside, offering escort services to anyone with 2 coins and a pulse. Sometimes they pay you. Sometimes they run when they see the size of your sword. You can to win. Then, one quiet evening, you find yourself staring at your reflection in a stream. You think, maybe the real job was the friend's eye. No, you didn't make any, but you keep walking. Because tomorrow, someone somewhere might need a highly motivated professional with 10 years of stabbing experience. And you will be there, resume in hand, which is to say, sword, still sharp, still loyal, still jobless. Your rice allowance is gone. You consider side hustles, guard duty, and by consider, we mean you stare at a single grain of rice like it as a stock portfolio you're trying to stretch into retirement. You've never had a budget before your daimyo used to hand out stipends like stern little Santa. But now, you're out here counting kernels and wondering if you can refinance your sword. It turns out rice is not just food, it's currency, status, a mood. When you had a lord, rice came in sacks. Now it is a teaspoon here, a handful there, paid sporadically by farmers who mumble, "We can't afford more. Please don't stab us." You wouldn't stab them. You can barely lift your sword, calories are low. So you start budgeting with newfound intensity. You divide your rice into neat piles, one for breakfast, one for dinner, one for emergencies, one for the mice because they always get a share whether you plan for it or not. You've seen accountants work with more dignity, but never with this level of despair. At meal times, you spoon your tiny portion into a bowl. You chew slowly, savoring each grain like a sommelier describing wine notes. Earthy, gritty, slightly damp, hints of existential dread. Sometimes, to add variety, you mix in water and call it soup, haute cuisine. Side hustles become necessary. First, there is guard duty, the most respectable gig available. You stand outside a merchant's door, stone-faced, looking intimidating while they count money you'll never touch. Your pay is rice, 2 handfuls a week, maybe 3 if you scare off a bandit or give off a good don to mess with me aura. Other jobs appear. Courier work. You deliver letters for people with money or at least more money than you. You walk up mountains, through rain, past bandits, only to arrive at a burned-out house because war is ongoing. You shrug. No refunds. Farm help. You try sincerely, only to be defeated by basic plants. The farmer yells, "You have to water it." You yell back, "I usually water people." You're sent away with 1 pickle and emotional damage. In desperation, you offer impromptu sword lessons. Students arrive eager, but leave quickly once they realize this involves sweating, discipline, and not waving blades around like they were chasing mosquitoes. One kid actually gets good. He challenges you, wins, and pays you half a handful of rice for your service. You tell yourself you meant for that to happen. Growth mindset. Every now and then, someone hires you to escort a cart of goods between villages. The merchant pays you with a nervous smile and 3 onigiri. Then he points out that bandits are everywhere and expects you to fight them using only dreams and hunger. Somehow you pull it off. You feel heroic. You are paid exactly 0 bonus grains. Then there is gambling. Oh yes, samurai are absolutely not supposed to gamble. But when your stomach is emptier than your future, You sit down with a group of old men playing dice. You lose because fate is cruel. A man laughs, with 3 teeth. You consider seppuku not for honor, but because it is cheaper than dinner. Once you try to busk. You recite poetry in a village square. Your voice is steady, passionate. A child throws a radish at you. Not even a good radish. You eat it anyway. Meanwhile, your clothes start thinning. Your once glorious armor is rusting. Your sandals are little more than astral concepts. You stuff straw between your toes to keep the cold out. It doesn't work. But you pretend it does so your dignity stays above 0. And you adapt. You store extra rice in hidden pouches. You learn which merchants give generous scraps. You figure out how to make tea with so few leaves it is just suspiciously flavored water. Your social life suffers. Friends avoid you because they know you'll ask for rice. You're that guy, the one who shows up to gatherings asking, "You gonna finish that?" But no one judges too hard. Everyone is broke. It is the Sengoku period war economy, baby. On rare days, fortune smiles. A wealthy traveller gives you a few coins. You splurge on 1 bowl of noodles. You eat slowly, eyes closed, convinced you've touched heaven. You lick the bowl. No shame. Eventually you learn the truth. Poverty isn't just hunger. It is constant negotiation with your body, your pride, and a world that doesn't notice you slipping. But somehow, despite everything, you make it work. You stretch grains. You hustle. You improvise. You even laugh sometimes, like when you spot Kenji trying to buy sake with a single pebble, and good intentions. And at night, when you lie beneath a leaky roof, your stomach rumbling like distant thunder, you think, tomorrow will be better. You don't know if that's true, but hope, like rice, is worth hoarding, just in case. Everyone imagines samurai are elegant, stylish warriors. In portraits painted centuries later, samurai look majestic, stoic faces, immaculate armor, weapons glowing like they were forged by moonlight and positive affirmations. They stand on misty hills, one leg up like they're reposing for a motivational poster. Believe in yourself or else, reality. You're a mud-soaked, rice-poor, damp everywhere disaster, with helmet hair so aggressive it should be charged with crimes. Your lacquered armor, chipped. Your kimono, smells like wet socks. Your stance, less noble warrior. More man who has not slept in 3 days. Basically, if people saw the real you, they would assume you crawled out of a rice field after losing a fight with a cow. You were told samurai lived lives of elegance, poetry, calligraphy, refined culture. Sure, sometimes you recite a poem, but you also use that poem as toilet paper when nature calls and there are no leaves left. The duality of man. Movies make samurai swords glimmer with magic. They slice through evil like butter through a croissant. In practice, your katana spends most of its time rusting in humidity, accidentally denting itself on armor, or getting stuck in some guy's ribcage like a sword-shaped inconvenience. Half of your maintenance routine is fighting mildew. The other half is whispering emotionally supportive things to your blade so it doesn't betray you in battle. People also assume every fight is a crisp, respectful duel in an open field with perfect lighting and dramatic music. You think that's how it works? Bah! Try sprinting through uneven mud, slipping on a guy's lunch, getting hit by arrows shot by someone whose name you'll never know, while the wind blasts dust into your eyes like it has a personal vendetta. There is zero elegance. You flail, you grunt, you pray, you fall, you get up, you fall again. It is cardio plus panic attacks, and those gorgeous sweeping silk robes, they lasted 5 minutes. After that, they became wet burlap with depression. Even the famous top knot, the perfect oiled bun that screams sophistication, turns disgusting in real life. Your hair smells like smoke, sweat, and sadness. Also, lice. You didn't imagine lice could have opinions, but you're pretty sure they gossip about you. Then there's the myth that samurai were always fearless. Oh yes, absolutely. You're 100 not scared, not even a little, while 100 Ashigaru scream and charge at you with spears and questionable breath. You're calm, dignified, and totally not regretting every life choice that led you here. No fear, none, except all of it. Hollywood, or, well, the future equivalent, suggests samurai eat fabulous feast banquets, fresh fish, fancy sake, endless rice. Meanwhile, you're chewing on cold leftovers that taste vaguely like disappointment. You dream of luxury. You get pickles and hope. Maybe, on a good day, pickles and rice. Today, just rice-flavoured air, and dawn to get started on houses. Myth says samurai homes were mansions with beautiful gardens. Reality says most of you lived in small wooden boxes where the wind was your roommate. You hear people brag about minimalist homes now. You invented minimalism, except your aesthetic was called, "I hope the roof doesn't fall in." The phrase noble warrior does ring true. Sort of. You try to be noble, you bow, you follow orders, you recite teachings about discipline and honour, but then you slip in mud and accidentally headbutt your commander because your horse sneezed. There's no coming back from that. Even your horse isn't glamorous. Paintings turn them into majestic war beasts. In real life, Sengoku horses are short, stubborn, opinionated creatures who despise you personally. They trudge, they whinny, they eat more rice than you do. Half your battlefield strategy is negotiating with your mount like, "Please, please, move, please, I will give you a whole pickle." The myth says samurai were beloved. Reality. Some people admire you from a healthy distance. Mostly peasants fear you, not because you're glamorous, but because you're a walking embodiment of "I could ruin your day." They bow, avoid eye contact, and pray you don't ask for rice. Even romance is a myth. People imagine samurai sweeping lovers off their feet. But you haven't bathed in days. Your socks can stand up alone. And your pickup line is, "I once served a minor lord. He died. Tinder has not yet been invented, but even if it were, you would get 0 matches." The myth, the fantasy version of you is clean, calm, handsome, mysterious. Samurai in poetry speak with elegance. Samurai in legends move with grace. Samurai in people's dreams embody honor itself. But the real you is tired, hungry, damp. You stink. Your armor clanks when you walk. You're always slightly injured, and yet somehow you keep going. Not because it is glamorous, but because it is life. Because it is duty. Because you don't know any different. Myth is shiny. Reality is muddy. And you're somewhere in between, still slogging, still swinging, still trying to look cool while falling face first into a puddle. And honestly, that is way more impressive. Eventually you settle into a strange peace. It sneaks up on you somewhere between realizing your rice ration is just a suggestion and witnessing your 15th last-minute betrayal in a single season. One morning, you wake up under a tree, rain dripping off your nose, and you just shrug. You whisper, "Yeah, this tracks," and go back to sleep. That enlightenment, samurai style. The chaos doesn't stop. You just stop thinking it as personal. At first, life felt like one long sprint through a burning rice field, every job insecure, every lord questionable, every horse plotting violence. You resisted. You panicked. You questioned why you weren't born something more stable, like a quiet potter or a contented cabbage. But in time you reach a point where your brain just softens, melts, and reclines on its tiny inner tatami mat. It starts with the small things. A ruined meal doesn't upset you, it is just texture. Bloodstains on your uniform? Ah, today's colour is dark red with regret. You wash what you can. You patch what you can. You pretend the sword nick in your armor gives it character. Daily life becomes less about winning and more about continuing. You still train, keep your blade sharp, stay alert, but you stop expecting clarity or fairness. Your new motto becomes, if no one died today, it is a victory. You accept that plans are vague, orders are late, and maps are lies. You no longer ask, where are we going? You just walk. If someone shoots arrows, you dodge. If they duntea, even better. In camp, you sit with other samurai and ronin. No one speaks. Not because you're mysterious, but because you've all reached the same spiritual low battery mode. You drink weak tea and listen to the wind. Sometimes someone tells a joke. If it is funny, you nod solemnly. That's how you laugh now. You stop obsessing about honor like it's a fragile vase. Honor becomes breathing. It's the quiet choice to keep moving forward even when everything's exhausting, muddy, and occasionally on fire. People still expect drama from you, duels, revenge, the whole kabuki of seriousness. But you don't have the energy. You meet insults with philosophical murmurs like, indeed. You dodge fights by saying, maybe tomorrow. Most people wander off before tomorrow arrives. There's freedom in not gripping life so fiercely. You learn to admire tiny joys, warm rice, dry socks, a friendly horse, a letter that actually arrives, sleeping in a place where raccoons don't threaten you for your leftovers. You start to notice beauty again, the shape of mountains against dusk, the quiet dignity of farmers replanting after another army tramples their fields, the way tea steam snakes upward like a small ghost trying to start a conversation. Sometimes you visit a shrine. You don't pray for victory or wealth. You pray for boring days, and occasionally you get them. With time, the chaos develops its own rhythm. Battles come and go. Lords rise and fall. Nobody remembers the difference. People shout orders, but you move at your own pace, calm, measured, internally humming a lullaby that may just be hunger noises. You look back on your former self, wide-eyed, stressed, trying desperately to control everything. You pat that version of you on the head. Poor kid. He thought life made sense. Now, you understand the truth. Life is chaos. You're small, and that is fine. Sometimes knights of other lands build legends of you fearless samurai, one with the blade. If only they knew. Your deepest enlightenment is knowing when to expend energy and when to nap. Your sword still glints when drawn. Your skills still matter, but they no longer define you. You're just a person in a world too large to ever fully understand. So you breathe, you bow, you carry on, because eventually the chaos becomes the backdrop, and peace is what you carry within, even if it's muddy, even if it's strange, even if tomorrow remains wildly unpredictable. You're okay. For the first time, you're actually okay. You made it. Somehow, through mud and mold, exploding matchlocks and questionable soup, terrified horses and unpaid internships, you've reached the end of your very long, very crunchy samurai day. Take a quiet moment here. Not to polish your sword, please. Put that away, but to notice the stillness settling over you. The rain has stopped. The camp is quiet. Somewhere in the dark, Kenji has finally stopped snoring. A miracle. Tonight you've lived an entire lifetime of chaos from the second you woke up to someone yelling about honor and breakfast, all the way to accepting that life is basically just suffering. But make it cultural. You trained until your joints protested, survived battles designed by someone with a personal grudge against comfort, and navigated a workplace structure where HR was just a guy with a scroll and a sword reminding you not to embarrass the company. You learned that your head could become a receipt, that rice is a salary, and a personality, that gossip is the true engine of war, that honor sometimes involves a very sharp exit. interview, and that being unemployed doesn't mean you're useless, just temporarily unattached. Through it all, you met 1,000 contradictions. A warrior defined by peace, a poet carrying blades, a noble born to serve, yet forced to wander. And somehow, despite everything, the fear, the hunger, the constant damp, you kept going. That's the real story. Not the shiny myths or painted portraits, but the quiet resilience of human beings who just refuse to quit. People survived this while wearing 40 pounds of armor, running on cold rice, and worrying that their boss might spontaneously ask them to die dramatically in front of everyone. So tonight, as you lie in your clean bed with sheets that aren't stiff from rain and a mattress that doesn't smell like the battlefield, maybe whisper a soft thank you for the miracle of indoor plumbing and health insurance that doesn't involve knives. Let yourself feel gratitude for warm meals, steady income, and bosses who do not demand your honourable self-disassembly during Q4 reviews. Because history may be muddy, loud, terrifying, and occasionally hilarious, but it proves something simple and comforting. Humans are stubborn, hopeful, and kinda ridiculous. We endure, we adapt, we laugh, even when things are bleak, even when our socks have mold and our rice has personality. So as you drift now into sleep, not into battle, breathe deeply. Feel your muscles settle, your jaw soften, your thoughts quiet. The swords are sheathed, the campfire dims. The world for a moment is safe. Tomorrow will not require armor. Tomorrow has no daimyo, no rice budgeting, no surprise arrows. Just rest, just peace. You've earned it. Good night, wanderer. Sleep well. May your dreams be warm, your rice plentiful, and your honor quiet and uncomplicated.